March 12th, 2024 meeting of the St. Joseph County Council is now called to order. Please stand for the invocation, which will be given by Councilman Fig, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Our God and our Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight. We ask your blessing upon this meeting. I pray you just guide and direct what's said tonight. Help us as we help govern this county, do ask. And also, dear Lord, I want to ask tonight for you to be with former Councilman Bobby McCahill. I just pray for him during this time of sickness. Help him and his family and his friends at this time. And I ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Root, President.
Mr. Catanzarite.
Mr. President, as Councilmember Fig alluded to, one of our former colleagues, Bob McCahill, is sick. He spent 8 years in the county council and a career in the Mishawaka Police Force as a honorable police officer, and he also worked honorably protecting our country as a member of the U.S. Navy and was honorably discharged from there. But Raphael, myself, and Jen had a chance to see him today and talk to his family, and they asked that we keep them in their prayers and keep Bob in their prayers as he deals with some serious health issues.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Catanzarite. Next up is petitions, communications, and miscellaneous matters. May I have a motion on the February minutes, please?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve was made by Councilman Fig, seconded by Councilman Tanner. Any further council discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The February minutes are approved. Next up is St. Joseph County Council Board appointments. Mr. Fig.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Mr. Dennis Heckman, Lakeville Economic Development Commission, Mr. Gene Reese, Walkerton Economic Development Commission, Ms. Sarah Williams, North Liberty Economic Development Commission, William DeLusa, St. Joe County Housing Authority.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second, motion from Mr. Fig and a second from Mr. Morton. Any further comments on the appointments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Dennis Heckman is reappointed to the Lakeville Economic Development Commission. Gene Reese to the Walkerton Economic Development Commission. Sarah Williams to the North Liberty Economic Development Commission. And William DeLucia to the St. Joseph County Housing Authority. That concludes our appointments for tonight. Next up is a report from the county auditor.
No report, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Report from county commissioners? No report tonight. Report from any council special committee? Seeing none, we will move to first readings.
Bill number 33-24, an ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for property located at 180 plus or minus acre portion of 12000 Cleveland Road to the west of Bittersweet Road, and the 375 plus or minus acre parcel west of and abutting 12000 Cleveland Road, 12501 Cleveland Road, and the 17 plus or minus acre and the 39 plus or minus acre parcels east end of abutting 12501 Cleveland Road, and a portion of 52682 Current Road, and a portion of the 180 plus or minus parcel abutting 52682 Current Road to the south and the east from A, Agricultural District Plan Unit Development to I, Industrial District. Petitioner, St. Joe Farm Limited Liability Company.
Bill number 33-24 is assigned to the Land Use and Planning Committee.
Bill number 34-24, an ordinance of the St. Joseph County Council amending Title 15, Chapter 154, Land Usage of St. Joseph County Code to amend the use classification of massage salons and tattoo and body piercing facilities and the districts in which they are permitted, and adding a definition for tattoo and body piercing facilities, and amending the numbering in section 157.070 of general regulations. Petitioner, St. Joseph County Area Plan Commission.
Bill number 34-24 is assigned to the Land Use Planning Committee. That concludes our first readings for tonight. Next up is salary amendments.
Bill number 28-24, an ordinance amending ordinance 107-23, the same being an ordinance establishing the salaries and fixing the numbers of employees of St. Joseph County Count for the year 2024. Petitioner Clerk.
Committee report, please. Committee report, please.
Is that my
That you,
Bill number 28-24 comes with a favorable recommendation.
thank you. Petitioner?
Yes, Amy Rolfus, Clerk of the Circuit Court. My office is in the basement of Courthouse 1. This is in regard to the 2 different grants that the clerk's office was able to secure from the Help America Vote. This particular one, and the first one is for the election security grant, which we are in process of getting all of the pieces together with that. And then the other HAVA College Poll Worker Grant has to do with our elections and recruiting poll workers from the college age population. So this is the distribution. It was a 10% match, and this is how we were able to do that.
Thank you. Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll move to public hearing on this bill. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Seeing no one, is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Seeing no one, is there anyone online who wishes to speak in opposition? The public hearing on this bill is now closed. May I have a motion on the bill, please?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve was made by Mr. Schetzel, seconded by Mr. Morton. Any further council discussion? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 28-24 was passed by a vote of 9-0.
Thank you so much.
The next
No.
bill is 29-24.
Bill
Bill nu-
29-24, an ordinance amending ordinance 107-23, the same being an ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the number of employees of St. Joseph County for the year 2024. Petitioner, St. Joseph Probate Court.
Committee report, please.
Bill number 2924 comes to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Petitioner?
Cheryl Rush, Controller at Probate Court, 1000 South Michigan. These 2 salary amendments are to correct the salaries to, as we discussed in the original budget meeting. There's no additional expense to the county, and we're asking that they be retroactive to the beginning of the year.
Thank you. Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll move to public hearing on bill number 29-24. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in favor? Anyone online? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in opposition? Anyone online? Public hearing on bill number 29-24 is now closed. May I have a motion, please?
Move for approval.
Second.
A motion was made by Councilwoman Hess. It was seconded by Councilman Fig. Any further council discussion on this bill? Clerk, please take the roll.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 29-24 was passed by a vote of 9-0.
Bill number 30-24, an ordinance amending ordinance 107-23, the same being an ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the number of employees of St. Joseph County for the year 2024. Petitioner, Health Department.
Committee report, please.
Bill number 3024 comes to the council with a favorable recommendation. Sorry, 3124.
Thank you. Petitioner?
Yes, Robin Vita, Director of Health Outreach, Promotion, Education, St. Joseph County Department of Health. Offices 8th and 9th floor of this building. This is our Indiana Department of Health Safety Pin Grant. This will fund, these appropriations fund 3 community health workers that are embedded in our maternal child health program, and our maternal infant health coordinator.
Thank you. Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll move to public hearing on bill number 30-24. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in favor? Anyone online? Cheryl Nix, go ahead. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. Cheryl Nix, 17901 Sable Ridge Drive, Clay Township. I support the health department's efforts to reduce the amount of infant and maternal mortality in St. Joseph County. I would love for there to be a day when it's down to 0. So I think this is a great use of funds. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online who wishes to speak in favor? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in opposition? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in opposition? The public hearing on bill number 30-24 is now closed. May I have a motion, please?
Move for approval.
Motion to approve was made by Councilwoman Hess, seconded by Councilman Morton. Any further council discussion? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Shetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 30-24 was passed by a vote of 9-0.
Bill number 31-24, an ordinance amending ordinance 107-23, the same being an ordinance establishing salaries and fixing the numbers of employees of St. Joseph County for the year 2024. Petitioner Health Department.
Committee report, please.
Bill number 3124 comes to the council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Petitioner?
Do I have to restate my name? I don't remember. Am I good?
No, go
Okay.
ahead.
Okay. This is our countywide lead fund. These appropriations are for our 4 CHWs focused specifically on lead poisoning prevention efforts.
Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll move to public hearing on bill 31-24. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? Anyone online? Cheryl Nix, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. 17901 Sable Ridge Drive, Clay Township. There is no amount of safe lead exposure for children. And all the research points to the devastating impact that lead exposure has on our children. So I applaud the efforts of the health department and this lead initiative to reduce exposure to lead for the children in our county and to make sure that children do not suffer the adverse lifelong effects of lead exposure. And I hope that, if anything, we expand upon this in the future so that we resolve this issue once and for all in our county. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Seeing no one, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Anyone online? Public hearing on bill number 31-24 is now closed. May I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion to approve was made by Councilwoman Hess, seconded by Councilman Thomas. Any further council discussion? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Morton?
Yes. Robin, I would just like to say thank you very much for this long-time effort. You and I have talked about this for years and some of the roadblocks getting into the most affected areas, and you guys have done a great job with that, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
And yes again.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Shetzel?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 31-24 was passed by a vote of 9-0. That concludes our salary amendment for tonight. Next up is public hearing, public comment on fiscal matters. All fiscal matters were heard and discussed by the council at its February committee meeting. So we will move directly into a public hearing on any matter listed under Bill 2724. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak on any item under Bill 2724 in favor? Seeing none, is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor of any item in Bill number 2724? Cheryl Nix, go ahead.
17901 Sable Ridge Drive, Clay Township. I was happy to see in this list of fiscal disbursements, the Health Department Health MIH initiatives. I think that is going to be money well spent. Once again, we're doing everything we can to keep every person in this county as healthy as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to any part of 2724? Seeing no one in the room, is there anyone online? Public hearing on Bill number 2724 is now closed. May I have a motion, please?
Move for passage.
Second.
Motion to pass was made by Councilman Morton, seconded by Councilwoman Hess. Any further council discussion on this? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
On the question, Mr. Root,
Yes.
item J from our committee meeting required an amendment. I don't know if that had to be amended on the floor tonight, or was that amended in committee for circuit court? There was a dollar amount. It was printed by circuit court, but it was advertised properly. So we're okay?
Okay.
My answer is yes, Mr. Root.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
vote yes.
Catanzarite.
All right.
Okay, so Mr. Catanzarite was yes.
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel? Mr. Morton?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that Bill number 27-24 was passed by a vote of 9-0. That concludes our public hearing on fiscal matters tonight. Next up are miscellaneous matters.
Bill number 20-24, an ordinance of the St. Joseph County Council repealing local oversight and control concerning the prohibition of ultimate fighting. Petitioners Brian Tanner and Mark Catanzarite.
Committee report, please.
Bill number 2024 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Petitioner? It's up to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. This was an ordinance that was identified while researching other pertinent matters back in December for an ordinance that was established in 1999 when this activity and sport was unregulated. In 2009, it became a very heavily regulated sport sanctioned by the State Athletic Commission with licensing in abundance. I think it was largely out of people's minds, out of sight, out of mind, because the state regulated it to such an extent that the original ordinance was never identified as being in potential conflict or certainly out of alignment with the state law. So that's why it was identified and presented for repeal. I'm open to any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Hearing none, we'll open the public hearing on bill number 20-24. 20-24. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor? Seeing no one, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to this bill? Seeing no one, is there anyone online? Public hearing on bill 2024 is now closed. May I have a motion, please?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion to approve was made by Mr. Tanner, seconded by Mr. Thomas. Any further council discussion on this bill? Seeing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 20-24 was passed by a vote of 9-0. That concludes our miscellaneous matters for tonight. Next up is land use and planning matters.
Bill number 2-24, an ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for the property directly north and abutting 11771 Jefferson Road from B Business to C Commercial District. petitioner Virginia Erickson, trust, and Janine Ford as trustee.
Committee report, please.
Yes, Mr. President, bill number 2-24 comes to full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Area plan?
Good evening. This is Carl Brown Grimm, Area Plan Commission staff. Tonight I'll be presenting bills 2, 3, and 4-24 together as one. So the subject properties are located at the northwest corner of Jefferson and Buckeye. Area Plan Commission staff has been working with the property owner to address a number of conformance issues. And this set of rezonings is really to help clean up the property lines and bring everything together into conformance. Currently on site, there's an auto repair shop, Zone C commercial, subject to a final site plan. A lot behind that, Zone B business, and then a single-family house to the west, zoned also B business. The goal of this rezoning is to allow for some cleanup at the subdivision level and to get all the buildings associated with the house on that one parcel to the west and rezone that to single-family to allow it to continue to be a house. And then for the 2 lots to the east to be rezoned to C commercial to allow for the auto repair shop to continue. Eventually, that rear lot will be combined with the lot to the south. This is a view of the current single-family house and the auto shop. This is the surrounding neighborhood, which is primarily residential in nature, but this residential development came mostly after the operations of the repair shop started in the 70s. And here is behind that shop. It's important to note that this portion of the lot will be used to store the cars more properly. I believe the plan is to provide hard surface here and kind of park the cars in a more traditional parking lot for the shop to work on. Here's the site plan submitted. It shows, again, the property line being adjusted to get the accessory building that's currently located with the house on one lot and then the repair shop on the other. These petitions all come to you with a unanimous favorable recommendation from the Area Plan Commission. One person spoke in favor of the petitions with none in remonstrance. Additionally, the neighbor abutting to the north sent in a letter of support for the rezonings. Staff's opinion is that the petitions do meet all state law criteria, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions from the council for area plan?
President Root.
Mr. Schetzel.
Just a quick question. The area where the cars are going to be parked, will that be visible from Jefferson? Will there be fencing? Is there any plan for that?
The petitioner can answer that. I don't believe at this time there's plan for fencing.
Okay. All right.
But
Just curious.
from Jefferson, I think it would be tough to see based on the size of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Petitioner. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes to address the council.
My name's Terry Lang from the Whiteman office. Our address is 1402 Mishawaka Avenue here in South Bend. I'm going to give you just kind of a little Reader's Digest version of what happened here and why we're here today. This entire 40 acres was owned by the Erickson family. Slowly but surely, it got developed with residential homes around it. The home right here was built in 1928. The following year, the garage for auto repair was built. And then in '66, this detached garage was built, and it was built without benefit of knowing where the property lines were, and that straddles the original property line that run down through the middle here. With that straddling the property line, this has transpired several generations from grandpa to kids to grandkids now. They want to sell the property off, which is the auto repair place. All of this came to light when we do the survey. So I met with the Area Planning Commission staff at great length, going back and forth over what was necessary for this. By splitting and going around that garage, also talking with the owners of the house parcel, it was in their benefit to rezone from the business to residential to make financing in the future not be a problem. The additional parcel to the north then was going to be utilized as part of the parking Currently, right now, the parking is all along both streets right here. If you've ever been down Jefferson, they stick out quite a ways and kind of blocks the line of sight. We are going to be giving written commitments for all of those vehicles to no longer be parked out along the sides here. Parking will be paved in the back to meet county standards back there. And hopefully a lot of the line of sight issues and all of these rezoning issues can be clarified. We have prepared a plat, submitted it to the Area Planning Commission to reflect all of these changes that you see right here before you. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing on bill number 2-24. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in opposition? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in opposition? Public hearing on bill number 2-24 is now closed. May I have a motion on the bill, please?
Second.
Motion to pass was made by Mr. Morton. It was seconded by Mr. Schetzel. Any further council discussion on the bill? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Catanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Tanner,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mrs. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel,
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Mr. Fig,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
President Root.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 2-24 was passed by a vote of 9-0. Our next bill is 3-24.
Bill number 3-24, an ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for property as portion of 11771 Jefferson Road from C Commercial District Site Plan Specific to C Commercial District Not Site Plan Specific. Petitioner Erickson Real Estate Holdings, LLC.
Committee report, please.
Yes, Mr. President, bill number 3-24 comes to full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. And I assume area plan is fine. Petitioner, do you have any further things to add on this one? Then we'll move to public hearing on bill number 3-24. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? Online? Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Online? Public hearing on 324 is now closed. May I have a motion?
Move for passage.
Second.
Motion to pass was made by Mr. Morton. It was seconded by Mr. Fig. Any further council discussion? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Tanner,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas.
Yes.
Mrs. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel,
Yes.
Mr. Morton.
Yes.
Mr. Fig,
Yes.
Ms. Hess,
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite,
Yes.
President Root.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 324 was passed by a vote of 9-0. Next up is 424.
Bill number 4-24, an ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for property at 11793 Jefferson Road and a portion of 11771 Jefferson Road from B Business and C Commercial Districts to R Single Family District. Petitioner Elijah Slaybaugh and Christina and Erickson Real Estate Holdings, LLC.
Committee report, please.
Yes, Mr. President, bill number 4-24 comes with a favorable recommendation to the full council.
Anything further, area plan? Petitioner? We will move to public hearing on bill number 4-24. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor? Anyone online? Anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Anyone online? Seeing none, public hearing on bill number 4-24 is now closed. May I have a motion?
Move for passage.
Second.
Motion to pass was made by Mr. Morton, seconded by Mr. Tanner. Any further council discussion? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
President Root.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 4-24 was passed by a vote of 9-0.
Bill number 5-24, an ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for property located at 56355 Ash Road from C Commercial District Site Plan Specific to C Commercial District Petitioner United Steelworkers of America, District 7, Local 12273.
Committee report, please.
Yes, Mr. President, bill number 5-24 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Area plan?
Yes, thank you. Sean Klein, Area Plan Commission staff with offices on the 11th floor of this building. So this is a petition to rezone the property highlighted there at the corner of Ash Road and Lehman. It's currently zoned C Commercial District, but it is tied to a final site plan that restricts the use to that of a union meeting hall and essentially development of the site to what's currently there, that being the Union Hall and then the parking area to the north. So the purpose of this rezoning is to remove that final site plan so that the site can enjoy the full array of C commercial uses as well as development at the northern portion. Specifically, there's interest from a local church to acquire this property at the northern half. They've outgrown their facility and they'd like to construct a new church and parking area at this location. So the property currently as viewed from the corner of Ash and Lehman. And looking north along Ash, south, and then across Ash into Elkhart County. The wooded portion you see there north of the parking lot, that's the area that the church would be interested in developing. The site plan submitted shows a parking area that would access Ash Road. That access would be subject to county engineer approval, and then the church building would be to the rear of that. It would be served by municipal water and private septic. This comes to you from the Area Plan Commission with a 7-0 favorable recommendation. Removing the final site plan will allow for a more efficient use of this property by allowing the full array of C commercial uses, including the intended religious use, as well as developing or allowing for development on the northern half of the property. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from the council for area plan? Being none, petitioner? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes to address the council.
My name is Jack Rory. I live at 10089 Lehman Street. I am the pastor of the church. We're purchasing the non-used property, and we appreciate your consideration for the property being used for a church.
Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Hearing none, we'll move to public hearing on bill number 5-24. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
My name is Bill Zimmerman. I live at 54590 Colonial Ridge Drive in Bristol, Indiana, and I am a current member of the church. And the church has outgrown the facility that we are currently in, and we are needing the use of this land so we can enlarge our church and enlarge our parking lot. The church seems to be growing, and we just need a larger building to operate the church and the religious services out of it, and we appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Anyone online wish to speak in favor? Seeing no one, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Anyone online? Public hearing on bill number 5-24 is now closed. May I have a motion on the bill?
So moved.
Motion to. Second.
Motion to approve was made by Mr. Schetzel, seconded by Mr. Fig. Any further council comment on this bill? Seeing none, clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 5-24 was passed by a vote of 9-0. Next up is bill number 22-24.
Bill number 22-24, an ordinance repealing ordinance number 42-23 and amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended to amend and expand the Industrial Enterprise Center Overlay District. Petitioner Area Plan Commission.
Thank you. Committee report, please.
Yes, Mr. President, bill number 22-24 comes to full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Petitioner?
This is Sean Klein, Area Plan Commission staff. So this petition would make some minor cleanups to the legal description of the existing IEC overlay district, which is shown here. Those revisions would not have any material impact to the north, east, or west property lines, or rather boundaries of the district. So the real substantive aspect of this ordinance is the expansion of the district south of 2 to cover approximately 636 acres at the southwest corner of State Road 2 and Strawberry Road. This is an anticipation of the rezoning, which is next on the agenda. If that rezoning were to go through, we want to make sure that industrial development is held to the same standards as the rest of the IEC. And therefore, we want to apply the use restrictions and the heightened landscape standards that are found in the current IEC overlay district. As with the overlay district currently, it would not apply to any agriculturally zoned land. It would not authorize any additional uses on agriculturally zoned land. And currently, it would only apply to new industrial development as opposed to existing industrial within the overlay. And again, this illustrates the existing overlay district in yellow, and then the green is what this amendment would extend the district to cover. Looking at the current overlay, we do have permitted, prohibited uses, landscape development standards, which are elevated beyond the typical I-industrial district, and then we have that western boundary buffer yard screening. Staff is close to having a new draft which has additional development standards. We'll soon be able to seek feedback from a variety of interested parties on that ordinance. This comes to you from the Area Plan Commission with a favorable recommendation, 7-0. There were 5 members of the public that spoke in remonstrance. They had concerns related to expanding the IEC beyond the core development area. Happy to answer any questions.
Any question from the council for the petitioner?
Mr. Root,
Mr. Thomas?
what kind of conversations, Sean, did you have with the community around? Did you have any kind of conversations with the local folks out there? Or did they just have this and you just presented this and they came to the area plan meeting?
In terms of expanding the overlay?
Yeah.
We did fully notice everyone within the expanded overlay as well as within 660 feet of the boundaries of that overlay.
Say that again.
So we did send out notice to every property owner within the expanded overlay as well as all property owners within 660 feet of the boundary of that expanded overlay.
How long have you been working on this?
The expansion or the district itself?
The expansion.
The expansion?
This expansion.
I would say 2 months, I would think, right?
Abby Wiles, Area Plan Commission Director. We've been working on the expansion of the overlay in tandem with the rezoning as it came, in tandem with the petition for the rezoning from A agricultural to I industrial, the property that's being proposed to be rezoned after this petition immediately. The way the IEC overlay is written, an individual property owner cannot petition to be located within it. Staff has to initiate the rezoning to allow the IEC overlay to go over that property. It's coming to you first prior to the rezoning to ensure that the same use protections that are present in the IEC, existing IEC overlay are extended to that property to the south, regardless of whether or not it's rezoned industrial. So we would hate for it to get rezoned industrial, and then for whatever reason, if the IEC overlay were not to pass, that's why it's before you first on the agenda. We've only been working on the expansion as long as the rezoning to industrial has been in play. Staff hasn't been working on expanding it beyond including the property that's proposed to be rezoned after this petition.
The comp plan, you know, I think it says something about going south of 2. I mean, do you take that into consideration when you're looking at this overlay? I mean, looking at the comp plan? The county comprehensive plan?
The county comprehensive, could
Well,
you
going
clarify your
south-
question?
Yeah, well, it says in there about not going south of 2, and if you're gonna go south of 2, the community would like to get involved with, if you're gonna decide to go south of 2, they'd like to hear from the community. And that's, that's just coming off the comprehensive plan.
The comprehensive plan from 2002 includes conceptual areas for future development and gives targets for approximate acreage of what should be reserved. I would say a comprehensive plan is a guide, right? It's not an ordinance like what we bring to you to request to amend. It is intended to be a guide, and the 2002 plan had conceptual areas for future development.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the council for the petitioner, Mr. Catante?
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Or Ms. Wiles? So if I understand Ms. Wiles correctly, the reason the IEC overlay takes place now before the actual rezoning consideration is if it were rezoned I-industrial, there would be no limitations. It would fall within the general I-industrial category. It could be any industrial use. Is that
That's correct. All the permitted uses within the general I. So we just wanted to kind of get out in front of that rezoning.
So if it were approved as an IEC overlay, it would have the limited uses, which we've agreed to, the limited uses in
Correct.
IEC industrial.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
No, is it no agriculture on that? That's industrial only in that extension?
Currently, or
No, the proposal.
the proposal, yes. So the IEC overlay would not have any effect unless that property were rezoned to I-industrial.
Thanks.
Any further questions for the petitioner? Hearing none, we will move to public hearing on bill number 22-24. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in favor of it? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor?
Yes.
Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Thank you. My name is Deborah Durrell, 21677 Norton Road, South Bend. For the record, I do not support development south of State Road 2. However, I definitely support extending the IEC overlay to any perceived or proposed development. We're all walking a line here, and this is pretty tricky. So I want to be careful that I am definitely supportive of the IEC overlay, the comprehensive plan, the area plan, and even economic development to the extent that it supports the broad public participation in this process and it still has to be approved and passed. If we are seeing an expansion of industrial development, I feel we definitely need the protections of the IEC overlay. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor? Seeing no one, is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in opposition? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Good
Good evening, Dan Caruso, 305 Compton Street, New Carlisle. I want to repeat the adjective that Sean used earlier, substantive. No substantive expansion of the IEC overlay outside of the existing area. And then he talked about the land south of 2. I am in support of the IEC overlay. I support the IEC overlay being spread out east to Snowberry, west to Willow, up north on Edison, farther past Walnut. That's expansion that's included in this. What I'm not against is what's going to happen in Bill 2324. So for that reason, I am against extending the overlay until we get the next bill. We're putting the cart before the horse here. We've got to get the next bill settled on whether we're going to rezone that to industrial and it needs protection, or it's going to be left agricultural, because right now, as you'll get my argument in the next bill, we're overextending what the limits of the 2002 comprehensive land use plan are, and it is an official policy document that was adopted by the legislative bodies of the county. So to kind of treat it as if it's just ramblings thrown in a folder is wrong. So yes, I am for the overlay, but I am not for the part that extends on the 630-some acres south of State Road 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Steve Francis, Judy Lake Drive, Clay Township. It's always hard to decide. I mean, you're going to testify in favor or against something when you're putting the cart before the horse here. In this case, the overlay really should be voted on after you decide whether, in fact, you are going to rezone the land. I testified in favor of the overlay, helped to work on it in terms of suggesting changes to the industrial overlay when it was in the yellow area there, but I am against extending it further south of 2 to another square mile of prime agricultural land when in fact you have not rezoned it at this point. So if it had been in the opposite direction, and in fact you ignored public comment, which is following this, regarding that expansion, then I probably would have testified in favor of it. Secondly, it's a good overlay, but it's not perfect. It also is incomplete. A year ago, it came up before the Area Plan Commission and before the council, and half of it was rejected. And it was rejected because there were remonstrators who didn't like parts of that. And in fact, Mr. Klein mentioned that in terms of working further on that. That was 1 year ago. We have waited for 1 year to see the additional components of the overlay, which will include water and electrical efficiency standards and incentives, which are going to be critical if you do, in fact, have businesses moving out there. So I oppose extending the overlay. It's in the improper order. And I do encourage the council members to get involved to make sure the Area Plan Commission gets this full overlay in place before extending any kind of, or rezoning of any kind of land. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Karen Kasmerzak. My address is 23364 Lawrence, South Bend, 46628. I'll just read to you some comments which I had written earlier. Democracy, by definition, is government by the people. Over the past several years, I have attended various meetings of the St. Joseph County Council and Board of Commissioners concerning the IEC and the expansion of commercial and industrial zoning in areas that are traditionally agriculture. During these gatherings, the majority of attendees voiced their opposition to this. I also participated in community input sessions concerning our priorities for land use in St. Joseph County. This was 3 or 4 years ago. The members of my discussion group overwhelmingly supported the preservation of farmland. No one spoke in favor of expanding industry on rural lands. A private company was hired to conduct the discussions, compile the information, and issue a report. To my knowledge, We are still waiting for this report. Based on the comments I have heard, there is strong opposition to an expanded industrial zone east of New Carlisle, and I am particularly against expanding it south of State Road 2. So considering the recent wildfires in Texas, which have destroyed thousands of agricultural land, we must see our farmland as valuable means of food production, which we cannot take for granted. I would suggest that the new industries that wish to come in would be located in the present IEC and not be located south of State Road 2. So I do thank you for your attention to this matter. Our government is supposed to be a democratic one. When people speak out for land preservation, it is incumbent on our elected officials to respect their constituents and halt further destruction of farmland. So again, I ask you to take these ideas into consideration, and I thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Betts. I live on Cottage Grove Avenue here in South Bend. I feel like I am in some kind of warped universe in terms of I don't want us to damage the land more. But I'm also speaking to you as a member of the County Comprehensive Land Use Task Force. For the new Comprehensive Land Use Plan, we have heard nothing now for almost a year, and I'm not sure. I wrote to Abby in September and asked her for an update, and she assured me that the consultants would be presenting the new plan and having public meetings on it in early January. It's March 12th. Nothing. There is not even a whisper about this. But somehow everyone just keeps marching on and trying to rezone land and trying to change the IEC overlay district. And since 2017, when we started working on this, the only thing that we've asked for is time. Could we please just, I mean, the metaphor was out there, the cart before the horse. Could we please just get this right? Could we please have all the information on the table before we make decisions that are irreversible? Once you pave over ag land, it's not going to be ag land anymore. So I'm not actually sure what to ask you all for, except for not to rezone any more acreage industrial, to make sure to get the IEC overlay district right. As Mr. Francis said, there's still missing parts. And to actually wait for the new county comprehensive land use plan that was supposed to be done months ago, so that we actually can get public feedback on this and make this not a fiasco. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Tom Rowe, 26160 Lake Lane. I listened to the presenters here. They all speak to me, and I'm hearing, with a great sense of logic, okay? What is the hurry of passing this, especially the going south of State Road 2? I live out in that area. I would hope cooler minds prevail. But what is the hurry of passing this tonight? I ask you for your consideration on this, please.
Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to speak in opposition? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in opposition? Mary, go ahead. You have 3 minutes to address the council. Please give us your name and address.
Hello, Mary Countryman, 52959 Timothy Road, New Carlisle. I agree with the previous speakers who have spoke against this for the reasons of it shouldn't be happening because it is in a off order anyways to begin with, but it really shouldn't be happening because it shouldn't be rezoned from agriculture, because goal 1 of the current comprehensive plan, goal number 1 says alleviate and minimize the loss of agricultural land. Minimize the amount of new development in areas with high agricultural importance. According to the map in the current comprehensive plan, this land is high yield cropland. It should not be rezoned to industrial, it shouldn't need an overlay. I've heard several times of Mr. Klein speak of, oh, this supports goal 2 in the comprehensive plan. Well, the number one goal in this comprehensive plan that we are still using, because for whatever reason, the one that I too participated in and spent many, many hours online looking up information outside of spending that time online to make the best plan we could have, it's still not there. So if you're going to be going by the comprehensive plan, the number one goal is alleviate and minimize the loss of agricultural land. On page 5-2, chapter 5, it talks more in depth of that, and I will speak about this again because this is going against the comprehensive plan. It definitely is going against it. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheryl, next, go ahead, please.
Sorry, it took me a second to unmute. I would just like to say that it seems to me that it seems to me that what makes the most sense is that the updated comprehensive county land use plan needs to be finalized and decided before anything happens with the IEC or any more rezoning types of issues. And so I would just urge everyone on the council to take a pause until this comprehensive plan is updated and finished. I just think that for community members out in Olive Township, they would appreciate knowing that their input and their concerns have been heard and will be considered in any decision-making going forward. But unfortunately, that plan has not been finalized. So why don't we just wait until it has been? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing no one, the public hearing on bill number 22-24 is now closed. May I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve was made by Mr. Fig, was seconded by Mr. Schetzel. Any further council discussion on 22-24? Mr. Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just in relation to everybody's concern that was voiced in regard to the order of these ordinances as they were presented to us, I'll just be upfront. I'm going to vote in favor of this, but I want you to know why. The IEC overlay, by its very definition, is a protection for the land. I don't know exactly what order or if I'm this first, second, third, fourth vote up here, but I can't presume how my peers on the council are going to vote for this potentially differently than the next ordinance that we're going to review. So it behooves me and potentially us, if others agree, to at least pass this level of protection in anticipation or a lack of truly knowing what the next vote may be. So I want you to know that just before we get a call to what our vote may be. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any further council comment? Seeing none, clerk, will you please take, Mr. Thomas?
Sorry,
didn't
Mr.
see you
Root,
down there.
sorry. Can I get somebody to explain why they're out of order? I mean, Councilman Tanner, I like that, you're right, it's there to protect the land. To clear it up, I think we need clarity. I don't know if there's anybody in here, if Abby or someone can speak on that. Maybe not. Because,
I mean, if for some reason we consider, we flip the order around, you know what I'm saying? I mean, if we consider the other bill coming up and we don't make it part of the IEC, it could be any I industrial use. So it's gonna have a lot more intensive industrial uses, kinds we don't want, the people have said they don't want out there. So in keeping with what Brian Tanner is saying, I agree. I think it's smart that we at least put it in the IEC for the purpose that it gives it no matter how the outcome of the vote's gonna come in the next ordinance, at least it puts those protections in place so it can't be a highly more highly intensive industrial use that would fall outside of the IEC types. Some of those intensive ones, I think, are mining, not trying to, you know, I'm just trying to say, I know the full IE, the full industrial uses are mining,
CAFO,
confined animal feeding operations,
Nuclear,
scrap metal.
scrapping operations, more auto yards, you know, auto salvage yards. I mean, those kind of, I don't think we want to see any of those out there, and that's why I think it's prudent, like what Brian said. There you go. Awesome. There's the difference between IEC and straight industrial, I think, isn't it?
Mr. Klein, would you like to take an answer at Mr. Thomas's question?
Yeah, so again, I don't believe that they're out of order because it is just a safeguard. If the property's not rezoned to I industrial, the overlay doesn't apply. It's not like that authorizes industrial use of the property. Until it's the underlying zoning is actually I industrial, it continues to be ag and is beholden to the A agricultural district. So the IEC overlay can only overlay the I district essentially. And it restricts what uses are permitted within those properties that are zoned I.
And all of that's gonna be I. The overlay, that's gonna all be I.
No. Much of it is actually agricultural, and the property that it's being expanded to cover, until you make an action to zone that I, it's still zoned A agricultural.
Gotcha.
Any further council comment? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Before I vote, it does seem confusing, and I understand why the taxpayers are confused, because as you explain it, it does sound like you're getting the cart before the horse. But I think Sean has clarified a little bit better for me. That's why we do entrust you on some of this, but obviously the votes always come down to us. But I feel a little bit better about it. My vote's yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 22-24 was passed by a vote of 9-0. Clerk, will you please read our next bill?
Bill 23-24, an ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154 Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for property located at 31000 State Road 2 and abutting 72 plus or minus acres at the southwest corner of State Road 2 and Strawberry Road from A Agricultural District to I Industrial District. Petitioners Kenneth and Elaine Sebasti.
Committee report, please.
Yes, Mr. President, bill number 23-24 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Area plan?
Yeah, this is Sean Klein, Area Plan Commission staff. So this is a request to rezone the highlighted portion there from A agricultural to I industrial. It is that very same southwest corner of State Road 2 and Strawberry Road. Looking to the north, our properties zoned I industrial, most notably IEC Site 1, site of the future GM battery plant. And then to the west, zoned I industrial district are the Navistar Proving Grounds. To the east and south are parcels zoned A agricultural. They're mainly cultivated farmland. There is one single family home to the east as well as one to the south. This is the property looking south on State Road 2 at various points. And then looking to the west across Strawberry. And then looking to the north across 2 from the property. The site plan submitted does not show any specific improvements. All development would now be subject to the use restrictions, prohibitions of the IEC overlay district, as well as the heightened landscaping standards, and then the industrial district development standards in terms of off-street parking, loading, lighting, other performance standards. Access to the site is proposed from a frontage street that would run along State Road 2, which would access a new interchange which is being planned at the State Road 2 Strawberry and Larison intersection. If the site is successfully rezoned to I-Industrial, as with all other IEC developments, it would be served by New Carlisle water and sewer from the city of South Bend. Again, it is now subject to those prohibited uses in the current overlay district. This comes to you with a favorable recommendation, 6-1, from the Area Plan Commission. Staff had found that it advances Goal 2, Objective A of the 2002 Comprehensive Plan, which directs the county to ensure that there are suitable areas available for industrial development, as well as Objective B of Goal 2, which states that employment uses should be located such that their conflict with residential land uses are minimized. We found that the site is suitable for industrial development, as outlined in the 2020 Indiana Enterprise Center Area Management Plan. This was based on its frontage on State Road 2 and the opportunity for sewer and water services. We found that the most desirable use would be industrial in light of these available utilities, highway and railroad connections, and planned industrial development throughout that district. In terms of conservation of property values, as noted, residential uses are extremely limited in this immediate area. And any impact would be mitigated by those use restrictions and landscaping standards of the IEC overlay district. And we found that industrial use should not adversely impact the ongoing use and value of neighboring industrial and agricultural uses. Furthermore, we found that it was responsible development and growth to allow additional industrial uses in an area of planned utility and road infrastructure improvement, which is underway to support these very uses. So again, comes to you 6-1. 5 members of the public spoke in remonstrance, and we received 1 letter. Concerns were mostly related to this being outside the existing core development area, and again, a desire for the comp plan and IEC overlay to be completed. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Any questions from the council for the petitioner or for area plan?
Mr. Root,
Mr. Thomas?
do you know how much the clover leaf's gonna impact that parcel for GM? How much of that's gonna be impact? I think I asked that in committee, didn't I?
You did. I believe Mr. Shalio had more to say on that matter than I do.
Good evening, Bill Shalio, Economic Development Director with part of Department of Infrastructure Planning and Growth offices on the 7th, 11th floor. Sean, if you could put a picture of the intersection. So right now, we have, as of last week, turned in the final traffic count information to INDOT. INDOT is making a final recommendation on intersection design. We anticipate that intersection improvements at that intersection could take between 30 and 35 acres of land in that southwest quadrant. It would also take land on the northwest quadrant from the General Motors site, as well as land that the county owns on the northeast quadrant, and then land on the southeast quadrant. The goal is to push the intersection to the west to work with friendly property owners, so we can minimize property acquisition. But again, still working through to finalize the design. We hope within the next couple of weeks we'll have a design finalized and an agreement with INDOT on a scope and moving forward with the project. So it's a project long overdue, but projects like this, projects like the GM project, certainly warrant intersection improvements at this intersection.
Would you say that's critical? Would you say that's critical with the clover leaf and the roads taking up 30, 35 acres?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. This the GM project, I would even back up one. I would say the current traffic demands in the area warrant improvements at that intersection. The GM project certainly elevates that need, and any project south of State Road 2 would elevate it that much further. So intersection improvements here have to be done. And again, a lot of good work that NDOT has put in on this to be a partner with us on this conversation.
So if you didn't have that, what would your alternative be?
So I would tell you that we wouldn't have a lot of support for this project, or project rezoning, if there wasn't the ability to extend water and sewer and do these roadway improvements. But with that opportunity and some of the things that we'll be talking about in the next couple of weeks will better illuminate the water and sewer extension opportunity, the improvements on the GM site, how those will play into this. So I would say that but for those improvements, we would not be supportive of a project south of State Road 2.
Thank you.
Any further comment or questions for area plan? Seeing none, petitioner.
Good evening. My name is Peter J. Agostino, attorney at law with offices at 131 South Taylor Street. I'm here on behalf of Ken Sebasti Sr. and his wife Elaine. The Sebasti family has been in the community for over 50 years. This particular parcel that we're seeking to rezone was the first parcel that Mr. Sebasti purchased for farming in the community, and it's been farmed into the 4th generation. So this was a big move for Mr. Sebasti to seek rezoning, but there's an opportunity there for him, which often comes with most farmers who spend a lifetime farming. Farming itself does not produce much income. It's the ability to monetize on that farmland from time to time that keeps farmers alive. And how does that happen? Farmers are able to sell property that's zoned industrial for more than what it's worth as farmland. And when they do that, they have to buy other farmland, because if they don't, they're going to get killed on their taxes. So the IRS code with the Section 1031 exchange encourages, almost forces farmers to reinvest farmland gain into other farmland, and that's exactly what the plan is here. Now, you'll hear some skepticism from critics of this that that's doesn't really matter, doesn't really apply, but that's not going to come from someone that's a real farmer that has had to face hardship, drought, bad weather, bad crops, and loss of money over the years, who now has a chance to perhaps gain on that. And it's important. When you talk about the comprehensive plan, the state law that controls comprehensive plans tells you at Indiana Code Section 36-7-4-501 that there are a number of factors to consider, certainly the public health, safety, and morals, but also sake of efficiency and economy in the process of development. Those aren't ranked goals. They're all equal goals. Same thing with respect to the goals in the comprehensive plan from 2002. Goal 1 is to preserve farmland. And I would tell you that allowing farmers from time to time to make gain on sale of farmland helps promote that goal, because they reinvest that in other farmland. It makes farming profitable for local farmers to do that. We're not dealing with a land speculator here. We're dealing with a guy that spent a lifetime farming who now has an opportunity to make something of that. It makes it possible for young farmers to stay in the family and keep at it. So you do have goal 1 being served. But goal 2 is to promote economic development. That includes construction jobs, long-term jobs, housing in the area, retaining local talent in the area, and having a welcoming attitude toward development, which is important for growth in this community. So I think that there is nothing in the comprehensive plan that suggests you can't do this, you can't rezone this. It's important to rezoning. I've heard the comment earlier about democracy, part of democracy, I think, is to preserve and protect freedoms. And I think that in this case, we have a private, we have a farmer, we have a private solution in a marketplace. And it does allow for some economic empowerment to a citizen. And I think that's important. And I don't think the government should take that opportunity away. I think it should help promote and foster that when it can. And I think you have that opportunity tonight. And I would ask you to use that opportunity to rezone the property. I think the biggest argument you're going to hear and the biggest point you're going to hear in opposition is, why doesn't the government do something to preserve the farmland? And what does that mean? That means you're being asked as a government to tax people, to spend tax dollar money to buy and preserve farmland. That does not sound very American to me. I think that takes us down the wrong path of utilizing government in that case as a social welfare agency. And I don't think we want our tax dollars being spent that way. I think here we have a private solution developed by the marketplace, and rezoning serves that. Thank you.
Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Mr. Cattandra?
Mr. Augustino.
Yes, sir.
So what you described about Mr. Sebesti and his investment, his intention is to, or their intention, the Sebestis, is to reinvest in future or more farmland. So is it based on the profit they could obtain from this, and because of the tax code, you say farmers are almost forced to reinvest in farmland to protect themselves from being penalized in taxes? Would, in fact, is it their plan, I think you may have said that, I want to make sure, is it their plan to reinvest into more farmland, more acreage than currently they're selling at this point?
Yeah, the amount of acreage that they're looking at investing in, it exceeds the amount of acreage being sold here.
Which will be utilized for farming.
Exactly.
The acreage they're looking to invest in.
Exactly.
It kind of reminds me a little bit of people I knew that had farms up on Grape Road, the Cousin family, and I went to high school with one of them. And Hank explained to me over the summer that, they sold a couple hundred acres up on Grape Road, Mishawaka, and now they parlayed that, due to the tax code, into 3,500 acres over in northwest Indiana, where they have a much larger farm now, but they're still farming. And as he explained to me, he goes, it's really hard for family farms to profit like you could in the old days. Now the equation now requires you to have large parcels of acreage in order to make it profitable to stay in business, unlike the 1 and 2 and 300 acre farms that used to exist. That's why he says they have to have a 3,500 acre farm to make it profitable, which is essentially a large industrial operation at that point when you're farming large plots of land like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is that correct? That's where they're going to buy more acres?
Yes.
Good?
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Augustino, that's a very interesting point as far as the reinvestment. Is that reinvestment, has that been decided if that reinvestment is going to be in this area?
It will be in the area, in St. Joseph County.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the council for the petitioner? Seeing none, we will open to public hearing on bill number 23-24. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this? Please come forward. You'll have 3 minutes to address the council. Give us your name and address, please.
Good evening, Bill Shalio, Economic Development Director. Just want to speak in favor of this. Again, as I noted earlier, we would not be supportive of this if but for there was wasn't the ability to get water, sewer, and roadway improvements to the site. We think that there's a development opportunity that will allow us to do those things, and not only get water and sewer to this site, but also to the Navasota Navistar Proving Grounds and Bendix Woods and some other development sites adjacent to this. So we think this is kind of the first piece in really making some improvements on the south side of State Road 2. And so we think this is a great opportunity. I will tell you from past work with the Sebasti family, they have reinvested in St. Joseph County. Those that know the Buffalo Farm out on State Road 2, just west of Quince Road, that was one of their purchases. And they're actually working to put a new barn on that site. So depending on what happens with the tax abatement ordinance later tonight, the new tax abatement ordinance will allow for tax abatements for agricultural uses. And so they would probably be first in line to come apply for a tax abatement for a barn on their site. So a lot of great opportunities that this would do. And again, as Mr. Augustino mentioned, they see that investment in the county for additional farmland is a good thing. I would also note that it's probably additional farmland outside of the IEC development area that they would be looking to do. They want to farm, they don't want to keep selling land for industrial development sites. So any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Christopher Huff, 1831 College Street in the city of South Bend. However, for 14 years, I was the director of city planning for the city of Mishawaka. And when Hank and Mary Lou Cousins sold that 50 acres, not 200, 50 acres, okay, northeast corner of Indian Ridge Boulevard and Grape Road, right? It was 50 acres for those two shopping centers, and they did trade essentially for about 1,000 acres down near Kentland, Indiana. So that is a fact, yeah.
Anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of this bill in the room? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor? Seeing no one, we will move to those who wish to speak in opposition. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes to address the council.
Dan Caruso, 305 Compton Street. Good evening again, council. First, I want to sort of not correct Mr. Augustino, but democracy is not one person deciding tear up the rule book because I don't want to follow that. I don't believe those rules. Don't include me in that. This is the comprehensive land use plan. That information is from the comprehensive land use plan. The comprehensive land use plan currently has a 2,000 acre cap on industrial growth in the New Carlisle area, which is covered next, almost or not quite, but right about 2,000 acres north of State Road 2. To exceed that goes against this plan drawn up by a lot of people, not one family. A lot of people decided what the guidelines of this plan were to be. It is an official policy document that was adopted by the legislative bodies of St. Joseph County. It identifies that it agrees there are wetlands to the west of South Bend and with terrestrial habitat. The expansion of urban development significantly to the west of 31 will result in damage to these habitats. There are a number of things noted in here that we follow. Have also been a number of things which Mr. Shalio has said, well, that's old, we're gonna do this, and we know the plan says that, but we're gonna do this because that's outdated and we're gonna get an updated plan. You've heard the issues with coming up with the updated plan. We have a plan in place. Don't selectively use it. There is plenty of space north of 2. That acreage is not even close to being full up there. It is industrially zoned. There is no need to rezone anything south of 2. I ask you to, you all received email communication from me, and my ask, and that is still my ask. Table this and pause any further requests to rezone from A to I property in our area. Thank you.
Bob Humberger, 29987 Herd Road in Olive Township. I live very close to the area. This is what I spent all day preparing to talk to you about, why not rezone down there. But I was so incensed by what Mr. Agostino had to say, because it's not true. When the Sebasti family bought or sold the property for the St. Joe Energy Company and some of the other property up there, they bought the next property down very close to where this property is. And then they brought the property that the county first purchased on Snowberry Road, tore the house down, and sold it back to the Sebastis for less than what the county had into it. So there have been several occasions when the Sebasti family has bought property that's right next to the IEC, and for that reason, I think they are speculators. And they, very well, if they buy property off somewhere else and continue continue farming, that's fine. But it's not true that they are not speculators. And I won't bore you with the rest of the thing. Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Betts, again, Cottage Grove Avenue. I, too, am incensed. The Sebasti family doesn't matter. Should this land that happens to be owned by X family be rezoned industrial? No. It shouldn't. We need ag land. First of all, my husband is a real farmer, and we can't afford to buy farmland in this county. The only way you can afford to buy farmland in this county is if you are a generational farmer and have speculated off some of your land holdings and made more money. There aren't new farmers because no one can afford to do it. And do you know what we need? What our country needs, what our community needs? We need the ability to grow our own food. And if we keep rezoning the ag land, we have no chance of food sovereignty here. We have no chance that we're going to be able to grow our own food as all of the crises of the world keep getting worse, and we need to be able to do that. We're not going to be able to. I could say more about the comprehensive land use plan. I could say more about so many things, but we need ag land. It follows everything I heard on the task force about the new county comprehensive land use plan, that people understand that we need ag land. I ask you, please do not rezone this industrial. Thank you.
Good evening once again. Deborah Durrell, 21677 Auten Road, South Bend. Thank you again for your patience in hearing us tonight. I also do not support development south of State Road 2. I have been here often supporting and appreciating the work that Area Plan Economic Development has done on the areas between State Road 2 and 20. That is really a win-win for St. Joseph County. However, I also feel it incumbent to position these improvements as a great start against what is still hanging out there for the future. I hope these approaches are not seen as giving a pass to development as usual for more sprawl, which I feel this is one of, nor even as enough for the IEC core area and surrounding areas themselves. For the concept of collateral damage at this ever-expanding scale is outdated. We have industrial sprawl, and the mitigation is an effort to only balance some of the effects and acres affected. Collateral damage has become prominent and dominant in our way of life here. That is even in this area of great knowledge and gifts, we can and need to do more along the directions set by the two-stage ditch and the green set-aside areas, including on existing developments, such as naturalized areas instead of structured gardens and lawns. It has recently been confirmed to me in private that we in St. Joseph County, north central Indiana, and west of South Bend, the home to the former Kankakee River Marsh, are now seen largely as a key development area for the rest of Indiana, outside of northwest Indiana, northeast Indiana, and southern Indiana, as our area is seen of lesser environmental value. This is not to our credit, due to the draining of the marsh, the deforestation, the continued draining and tilling of the flatlands of what is becoming more degraded quality farmland between our wooded and water areas, the highways, the roads, and everything else that is putting us in the crosshairs. So if we look at the synonyms for collateral damage, fatality, sacrifice, victim, casualty, prey, loss, martyr, loser, murderee, and underdog, we can now apply those terms to many of the quality of life issues that we've been fighting to protect if we don't rein in the sprawl and the rezonings. Thank you.
Good evening, Steve Francis, Jude Lake Drive, Clay Township. First, I want to start by saying, how many of you have read the comprehensive plan recently? It's only been around for 21 years. So I hope that you have read it. I hope that you take a look at it. It's good reading, actually. It needs updating. It's, vastly needs improvement. It includes the cities, which we don't do that anymore. This is just going to be a county comprehensive plan. But then I want you to take a look at this map. Look at the yellow area, please. That is the existing IEC. There's 3,000 acres there. It's twice or three times the size of the city of New Carlisle. The people feel out there, they've had this industrial area essentially dumped on them. Now, none of you live out there. I understand that. I don't live out there. Maybe Mr. Thomas does. But, oops, you moved, did you change the?
I wanted you to see the proper zoning.
Well, okay, well, anyway, okay, I'll go with this. The colors, I wanted to have the colors because when you look at that, it's 3,000 acres north of State Road 2. Only one half of that has been filled at this point, not even one half, with some existing properties such as the Cleveland Cliffs and the Energy Center, with the Sebasti land that was sold, I think at about $40,000, $50,000 an acre instead of $10,000 to $12,000 for ag land last year for the battery plant. But the rest of it is still available. It's still there. Mr. Shalio should be marketing that property to prospective customers. We don't oppose growth and development. I went to Notre Dame for 5 years to get a degree in economics, a graduate degree in economic development and public policy. Your role is not to enrich landowners or even to guess that they might buy land elsewhere that's agricultural. Your role is to establish sound economic policy and sound land policy that balances the various needs of the county. And one of that primary need of prime agricultural land is what you're going to pave over and tear asunder. You saw pictures of it. It's absolutely gorgeous and rich agricultural land. Stay within the confines. I asked 3 months ago when you expanded the economic development area that you confine the IEC to State Road 2, State Road 20, Willow Road, and Strawberry Road, well, it's east, Mulberry, yeah, west of Larison, or east of Larison. That's 3,000 acres now. Why are you considering another square mile of land here? Land that, by the way, has serious, serious drainage problems. If you look at the map before, look in your materials, you'll see water drains off of Navistar onto that land. You had drainage problems there. The ditch, the stream that runs down through the battery plant that you're going to relocate runs down through there. Has serious flooding problems. The 100-year FEMA flood plan takes up a full 1/3 of that area, which is unbuildable unless you drain it more.
Mr. Francis, your time is up.
Okay, I ask you to reject this, to request that you stay within the confines of the land that is available now and which is available to market and which you have previously approved and I have testified in favor of. Thank you.
Charlotte Wolf, 21439 Osborne Road, Lakeville. A handful of community members went to Elwood, Illinois a few years ago to personally view and discuss the effect that these large format development companies have had on their economy and quality of life. And these community members spoke with residents and an Amazon warehouse manager there. There is an ongoing fight to protect their community, but the losses are so immense that it may require several lifetimes to recover, if ever. It has informed the work we are doing here to locate these companies in urban and brownfields instead of in the farming areas and surrounding woodlands. Despite all the effort to influence the process, attempts at dialogue, attendance at meetings, et cetera, this body has had a history of deflecting and ignoring instead of appreciating this valuable time spent by we, the citizens, in our research on the negative effects of these plans. And I've given you a couple of links to go to articles why this large format development in the long term does not gain community positives. So I do believe that enough is enough. Gaining more and more land at the county taxpayers' expense, and may I respectfully remind Mr. Agostino that the county has actually been purchasing this land. So it's not private capitalism at work. It's the county, our tax dollars, purchasing these land parcels after they've been rezoned. It is not only ruining our farming land and communities, but it may be circumventing the democratic process, as has been mentioned, as well as bankrupting our county funds. And a group of us are determined to limit the bleeding, as one planning commission member recently termed it. The burden of proof is now on this body, not we the citizens. And we will be using all means, political, media, and not excluding legal means, to limit the purchase of land by the county to what it already has. We will hold county council members accountable for their poor decision-making. Enough citizens are already very unhappy with these decisions, and we intend to do all in our power to limit the damage to current areas. It's more than enough already to satisfy the disregard and disrespect by our county officials toward the taxpayers of this county. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the room who'd like to speak in opposition?
Yes.
Tom Rowe, 26160 Lake Lane, South Bend, Indiana, 46619. I'm only about a half mile to the north of State Road 2 off of Quince Road. I see the traffic flow that comes from there all the time. One thing that's never been brought to the attention of the citizens at this point in time, sort of like when will that be discussed, is with more purchase of property, what's traffic control going to be there coming into South Bend? I have heard nothing as far as traffic, all up the state. Where's your positions as St. Joe County Council members? It's number one. One of the pointers up there when you're talking about this redistricting was south of State Road 2, growth and potential. That's sort of speculative in its own way. What are we going to put in there? I don't think anybody knows yet what's what it would be. Thirdly, I'd like to compliment the people that come up and spoke tonight, because I thought that they've been very well thought out and they've done a lot of research on it. I'm not an expert on it, and I admit that, okay? Fourthly, to you, Attorney. I don't like to be disrespected, okay? I don't like to be disrespected by you telling me what democracy is. I live it every day. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in opposition? I see Mary. Mary, go ahead, give us your name and address. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Mary Countryman, 52959 Timothy Road, New Carlisle. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I certainly hope that every member has read the current comprehensive plan that we are using, because this just goes against the current comprehensive plan as listed within the executive summary plan, quote, avoiding encroachment of environmentally sensitive areas, avoiding highly productive agricultural land, end quote. This is in the map of highly productive agriculture land. Again, it was brought up with goal 2, so again, I'll bring up goal 1 again. You're supposed to eliminate it, not keep taking more and more farmland. Democracy should follow the current comp plan prepared by the area plan listing 20 members, the study review committee listing 19 members, and staff listing 10 names. There were, just for a little bit of history on this current comp plan, there were 6 public the one that were following the 2002. There were 6 public meetings. There were groups after that. There was electronic participation. There were focus groups. There was a reason back then. There were smart people back then, back in 2002. And the recent plan also, participants understand the importance of prime farmland and water below it. You can put industry just about anywhere. You can pipe water into it to some extent. You cannot put farmland just anywhere. All over the news every day. Look at the wildfires, look at the drought, look at it all over. Do we want to become more dependent on another country for food? No. At a recent meeting, it was asked how much of the land in the already existing IEC area is occupied with industry. Bill Shalio did not have a solid answer with definite numbers, which actually included, some of his numbers said, well, there was some croplands in there. That came out. So actually it's not full of industry. There's still cropland in there. I emailed the St. Joe County assessor last night asking for a number of acres of industry in all of St. Joe County, because the comp plan does set limits. There are limitations on the number of acres. That's also in goal 2 that Mr. Klein talks about. There are also the limitations listed in there, the maximum. So I asked that this item at least be tabled until there is a number of acres shown to us, as since the 2002 plan, there has been a lot of farmland lost, and here recently, big chunks of farmland lost. I do live out here in New Carlisle. I am from a farming family, and I take very much offense to what Mr. Augustino said. And I don't know if he's from a farm family or not. I'm guessing not, but one family that wants to profit shouldn't take precedence over the remaining citizens of St. Joe County. I know how it works. I was a farm person. I was a farm girl. I grew up raised on a farm.
Ma'am, your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Cheryl Nix.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak in opposition to this bill. I think the argument that we need to rezone because a family wants to make money is a really pretty preposterous notion. I would agree with the statement that Jennifer made when she spoke in opposition earlier, and she said the decision should be based on, should it be rezoned? Should we expand the amount of industrial zoning? And given the fact that there are already 3,000 acres in the IEC, it seems pretty clear to me that the answer is no. There is plenty of room in the 3,000 acres for development. And so I would urge you to vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing no one, the public hearing on bill number 23-24 is now closed. May I have a motion on the bill?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve was made by Mr. Fig. It was seconded by Councilman Tanner. Any further council comment or discussion on this bill? Ms. Hess.
Yeah, thank you, President Root. I would just like to ask Mr. Shalio a couple questions. Sorry to make you walk all the way up here again, but so to Mr. Francis's point about I believe it was him that brought up the water situation, the Navistar, the drainage, and the concern there about flooding and water problems. Can you address that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we can flip to the aerial. Yeah, that probably works best. So to the west side of this site, to the east side of the Navistar site is the Rogers Clark ditch. Any water that comes off of Bendix Woods, any water that comes off the Navistar site ends up in the Rogers Clark ditch. The water doesn't flood the ditch and then come onto this site. So there's no water. I shouldn't say no water, that's a overly affirmative statement. Likely, water does not come onto the site from the Navistar site because of the ditch that's in place. That ditch travels south to the south end of the Navistar site and then east back to the Nespejani ditch that runs along Strawberry Road.
So is development here going to add to water problems, or more water into the ditch, which would create a problem?
Yeah, so there's actually, any development that would occur on the site, the water would likely come to the east. It would be sent to the Nespejani ditch. Much like is happening on the GM site, improvements would happen to the ditch corridor. On the Nespejani north and the GM site in that area, we've improved the ditch and improved the ditch quality from a regular ditch to a two-stage ditch. We anticipate that there's the potential for that in this corridor, so making improvements to that ditch and making improvements in that corridor. I would also tell you that we're working with the county surveyor, the county engineer, and others, including Scott Piloff, who runs the Kankakee River Basin Commission, looking at opportunities to study the Nespejani as it gets closer to the Kankakee area. We understand that the Kankakee area is very sensitive. This is one of the, I believe, 3 points of water into the Kankakee in St. Joe County, and so we want to make improvements in the ditch corridor. There's some water issues that we know that are existing issues down at the train tracks, down at Canadian National, down by Crumstown Highway. So we're looking at corridor ditch improvements through this whole corridor. But any improvements that would be made on this site or any other site south of State Road 2 would have to meet all the current requirements, would have to meet Army Corps requirements, IDEM requirements, and all those kind of things. So, but we're very aware of those and looking at ways to enhance those things in that area.
And then I have just another question.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been a lot of concern about, or questions about why we can't pause this decision. So to extend the IEC on the south side of 2, so could you address what kind of impact it might have on economic development in the area?
Yeah, so there's a couple of timing things. So as we are continuing to work on the GM project site with utility extensions and the coordination with that project, there is another project that is looking at this area south of State Road 2 and actually another parcel area within the IEC development area. The opportunity to extend utilities part and parcel with the GM utility extension is very critical to that. Another piece of this too is the improvements at State Road 2 in Larison, very much tied to development on both sides of the road. So timing is going to be very critical to get improvements done at 2 in Larison done before GM would open its full site development in 2027. So timing, just in the bigger picture, is very critical. We made some very affirmative steps today, going through the process to sell the bond for those improvements on the GM site today. A lot of pieces are moving forward to move development. So timing is very critical at this point in time.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Catantri?
Mr. Shalio?
Yes, sir.
One of the remonstrators mentioned there's plenty of land north of State Road 2. Could you address that?
Certainly, there's 2,920 acres in the core development area, so that's the broader area. If you less out the area that's within the town limits, it takes it down, I think, 600, 700 acres. That's the acreage that's part of Tech and Coat. I learned this answer a long time ago, the way to answer this question. All of the land is developed, and all of the land is being used. There's no vacant land per se. It's either being used for residential uses, agricultural uses, or industrial uses. There is land presently that is zoned industrial. I would tell you the majority of the land that's zoned industrial is owned and teed up for industrial development. So whether it's IEC Site 1, IEC Site 2, some of the land adjacent to Tech and Coat, that's at this point in time teed up for development projects over the next couple of years. There is a bunch of land east of Larison, but again, a lot of that's privately owned and privately developed. The county owns very little land in this area, hasn't bought land, or if we bought land, it's been very small parcels that were aggregated into bigger development areas. So again, until those property owners want to sell, it would be tough to put a 640-acre project site into several smaller areas in this area.
Thank you.
Mr. Tanner?
Thank you, Mr. Root. Couple comments in a few different directions. I think land ownership and property ownership, there's a pretty strong constitutional law that goes around that. But at the same time, we have zoning to protect the public. So Pete, I respect you greatly, but I feel like you could make a better argument if given a second shake. I would hope so. The zoning is there to protect the public. Not to color my opinion on this, because as you heard before, I seconded the motion. Because my second point is this: the comprehensive plan is well over 20 years old. The current process to establish a new comprehensive plan is behind what I think we all believe is the established schedule that it was expected to be available. However, state law identifies that it shall be considered as guidance by the legislative bodies that review that. Even that aside, state law also identifies that thoroughfare plans and area management plans supplement comprehensive plans with more detailed evaluation in specific areas. That's exactly what the IEC area management plan was that was established in 2020. It is a more detailed area management plan that was established for the 7,200 acres that you see as a larger boundary. It does delineate the difference between the core development area and the overall IEC area, but it does identify not just down to Gordon, but to that southern edge of the Navistar Proving Grounds as a portion of that IEC area. That was a long process, just like the comprehensive process was. It was a contentious process. Ma'am?
Ma'am, you're out of order.
I'm sorry, I would love to talk to you after the meeting. But at the end of the day, the area management plan is the supplement that we should be considering as part of this. I wasn't on the council at the time that it was established. I followed along in the news in quite a few different ways. I was on the Mishawaka City Council and considering how do those kinds of impacts affect the city of Mishawaka at that time, not the county as a whole. So it's just important to understand that these are all parts of a greater whole. And selfishly, I don't want to be beholden to a comprehensive plan that is over 20 years old, that is about to be not necessarily overridden, but certainly reestablished through the new comprehensive plan process that we've only recently been given some very executive level summary previews of. And I think a lot of us are equally as frustrated with that as you are. But the area management plan is a supplement. It is a more detailed consideration over this focused area. There were a ton of stakeholders involved with that, not just the community, but also representatives of the town of New Carlisle, the county, the planning commissions, MACOG, et cetera. So that is the guiding document that I'm operating off of, not in spite of the comprehensive plan in 2002, but as the more recent, more appropriate, more aligned view of what we're voting on today. Just to give you some perspective of where I stand with that. It's a 221-page document. If you want to look at the map as it relates to there and the boundary of the IEC, it's on page 4, or Roman numeral 4 in the front end documents. But it does confirm that 7,200 acres. And it is in line with state law that it's a thoroughfare plan or an area management plan that supplements the comprehensive plan. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other further council comment or questions? What?
Councilman Thomas and.
Councilman Thomas.
Can I ask Mr. Shalio a question?
Ma'am, we're out of order.
Can I ask Mr. Shalio a question, please? On the Navistar is next to them, Park, I believe, also. Now, how are they going to be affected by that? I mean, I know SS was asking about it by utilities, sewer, et cetera. Can you expand on that? Are they going to benefit from all that?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that's been a challenge for Navistar, two things. One is lack of utilities, so that's hampered growth opportunities on their site. So they currently run off a well and septic. Some of that well and septic probably dates back to the early days of the Studebaker development on that site. So what we've looked at from a water and sewer standpoint is as we extend water and sewer south of State Road 2, there would be a line that would extend both water and sewer along State Road 2 back through the Navistar site, ultimately to Bendix Woods County Park. That line could go up to a certain point, could service Magic Mountain or Mini Mountain across the way, or any other developments in that corridor. But from a gravity standpoint, we hit a point where we just can't, the sewer can only go so far before we run into issues, same with water. So water and sewer would be able to service that area. The other thing too, what we would do is look to establish a frontage road back from the interchange all the way back to Navistar, and so there would be a new entrance for all the truck and heavy vehicle traffic coming in and out of the Navistar site so that they're not directly accessing onto State Road 2. We believe that probably ultimately all their employee traffic would come in on that new frontage road into the site. So again, a way to remove State Road 2 traffic or their traffic off of State Road 2. So huge benefit to those project sites.
Thank you.
You done, Mr. Thomas?
I'm done, thank you. Sorry. So I wanted to follow up, Mr. Tanner. And I understand a zoning ordinance have two purposes, really. They give us a clear order on how we develop our cities and different areas of our county. They also protect the public from clear possibilities of danger. Hold on a second. Clear evidence that there could be harm, right? Zoning laws protect the public from clear evidence that there could be harm. I don't see clear evidence here that there could be harm to the public. And I do appreciate Mr. Augustino's comments about the right of individuals to use their property, to sell their property, as long as they're not harming other people. It's a basic right that we have as Americans, and I think it's worth noting. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Agostino, would you like a chance to rebut any comments that were made?
Thank you, Mr. Root. Briefly, to clear up, this property is not being sold to the county. The county is not a buyer here. This is a private transaction. That's one point. Secondly, my intent here was to not offend anyone, and I apologize to anyone that was offended. I certainly didn't come here to do that, to offend you. Somehow, somewhere in my communication to you was lost the idea that this is a good opportunity for the county in terms of jobs, development, and I don't think we should lose that opportunity. I understand and I respect the right of fellow citizens to come up here and petition against this. First Amendment protects that. I'm a big First Amendment proponent. At the same time, ultimately, what you have is to balance. And I think here, in balance, the interests of the public are better served by granting the zoning. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further council comments or questions? Mr. Tanner?
Thank you, Mr. President. At the risk of rambling on more than I already have, I want to address that there's been a lot of concern shared about environmental impacts. But just to clear the air, I grew up in front of a cattle farm and behind a cornfield. It's one of those environments that I grew up in 3 miles outside of a town of 5,000. I'm from the roots that you still plant and that you still till. But just to identify some of the contradictory things that have been said about the Kankakee Valley, that doesn't really exist in our area to the degree that it used to because of the farming, because the land was tilled and developed and formed for that farming. I'm not going to sit here and say we should get rid of the farms entirely. I'm not going to sit here and say that we should blanket the entire county with an IEC district. But to blankly say that this has a negative environmental impact when we're already seeing 100+ years, perhaps 200+ years of environmental impact of farming as it relates to the origin points of the Kankakee River Basin. And that's not to even make light of the pesticides and high nitrogen content of the runoff of some of these fields. Now, the family farms may not rely on that as much, but some of these larger sites are leased. They're leased to corporate farming operations that do over-nitrogenize the soil, that they do pesticide the land, and we do see that in the environmental runoff of these locations. It's not to say it's in opposition of farmland, because that's certainly not the point that I'm trying to make, but we can't say that any industrial development in this area that complies with the IEC overlay as previously established necessarily has a greater negative environmental impact than 200+ years of tilling or potentially over-tilling the land. I'm also not going to say that it does the opposite, but we can't speak out of one side of the mouth and not expect it to come back out of the other too. That's the last point that I'll make, and thank you, Mr. President, for entertaining my time.
Any further comments? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Before I vote, I just want to say a comment or two. The input and discussion is very good. I'm conflicted. I think that, the IEC's here, and you can see some of these benefits. I think I hear the word slowing down. I do like that. But it is hard, no.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Bill passes 8-1.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 23-24 was passed by a vote of 8-1. What? And at this time, I think we need to take a recess, so we will take a 10-minute recess and reconvene in 10 minutes.
I held out as long as I could. I want to make a newsworthy event happen. That would not be good.
Would have distracted everybody. What?
Yeah, she gets all the glory.
They do not.
Yeah. I can say, I didn't know anything about it. I'm on the campaign trail. I don't.
Yeah.
I almost read it. I didn't want to make a newsworthy event.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Dad, get out of here. Go back.
No, I read it on my phone. The business people, the news broke last night. Okay? So when he's talking from the commission, the mayor and the commissioner were called. He said he'd get back with respectable options, okay? Be careful. So I'm glad that that was presented. Were you there? Your business. Now, I read on my phone what all the sites were. I read what all the sites were. Well, like I said, I read all the sites. So I want to find out all the things, so I want to ask.
It is what it is. It's not, no, I'm not, it's not a plan, it's not a loss, it's just what it is.
All highlighted, but I at least want to address it because I'm glad that you shared it on that they spoke to the business. Okay? It doesn't really need to be there, but now you're on my back. Right down the top of it. One of them was an architectural firm. So there's more people, so let me hold on to this. So anyways, Logan Foster, a Redress South, but he was among other people. But I, you may or may not have heard, okay? And I'm gonna say that anybody that's not a proponent of the concept should not be on a search committee. Okay? Because I am sure it's very pretty negative stuff in the newspaper back on January 6th, so that's all I'm doing, okay? Speaking my mind. You're gonna be here?
I mean, I was really surprised the recommendation is already in.
Yeah, sorry, I went.
I was gonna ask if you ever found it, but yeah, we know, kind of know we did it.
I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. This is so interesting.
Okay, I'm glad you didn't get it. There's just this one more, that'll go quickly, and then it's you and you're done.
Yeah, I just, I already fish Friday, but.
Will the county go out and mark the alleyway or the easement?
They won't. You could hire a surveyor who would be able to do that for you.
I will say.
But I'll give you a call tomorrow with all the details of how to finalize it. We can talk about that.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Had very.
Pretty good.
Great. Good.
It's a long one.
Yeah, that's what it. Yeah, it's not like a, yeah, I understand, yeah. That's a late one, a long one. The tax one gonna be that difficult too? God.
I need you to wire that $37,500 to U.S. Bank on Monday, March 25th. You can do that.
Yeah, we gotta talk to the treasurer. An ACH, but that takes a day to get there. If we could do it.
You can.
We could do an ACH.
Okay, that's fine. I want it to be easy.
We can do that Friday or something.
Yeah, that's fine.
Make sure it gets there.
I'll have Daniel mark that up as an ACH.
It's better than the wire.
Okay. Because what we're doing is we're paying for all 25 years of the trust so that we won't ever get a bill again.
Oh, for the trustee fees?
So I wanted to use their money to pay for all the trustee fees for the next 25 years. Instead of the county having to write a check for $1,000 every year.
Yeah, it's got to
for the next 25 years on a deal nobody remembers anymore.
That's true.
My son will be around having to deal with that crazy deal.
Yeah, you probably will. I'll have to unwind it, yeah. Refinance it, probably in a few years.
No, that's the honeysuckle. I never refinance it.
What's that?
Honeysuckle will never get refinanced.
Oh, well.
There's no incentive for them to refinance it. It's basically just a constructive way to do a 25-year tax back. It's really not a bond.
Okay.
We just use bonds as the instrument.
Okay. So what are they paying? They're paying us like $3 million?
Paying us $3 million incentive fee. That goes into the redevelopment general fund. I think the Randy Finch figured out a way to spend it on a fiber project.
As good as ARP money.
Yeah. Maybe better. He has not as many rules for reporting for me.
Yeah, it's not reporting, yeah, that's true, that's better. Good.
I know what it is.
Does Daniel like working with you and stuff?
Some days.
Some days you're mean to him.
He likes his days in the field, working with his clients.
Oh, he likes that better?
He doesn't like the days in his office, me throwing stuff in. I mean, today was a 200 email day, just boom.
Oh, gotta get this, yeah.
It just, everything just blows up on him.
Yeah, okay. Well, most people it does too.
I'm texting and then I'm messaging and then I'm emailing and calling.
You're like my wife, she does that too.
My daughter's a recruiter, so I work for that world, and I don't know if those people pay. Legal office. I'm sure.
Except the coffee is more like every half hour.
Well, actually, that's
my first budget meeting when I came to the county, it lasted from like 6 o'clock to midnight. I go, holy shit, why did I go here to the county?
I don't touch them. If you look at that one, then you don't get a headache.
The regular meeting of the St. Joseph County Council is called back to order. Clerk, would you please read our next bill?
Bill number 24-24, an ordinance amending and supplementing Title 15 Land Usage, Chapter 154, Planning and Zoning of the St. Joseph County Code as amended for property located at 55540 Apple Road from C Commercial District Site Plan Specific to C Commercial District. Petitioner Grove Property Investments, LLC.
Committee report, please.
Yes, Mr. President, Bill number 24-24 comes to the full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Area plan?
Good evening, Carl Brown Grimm, Area Plan Commission staff. So this subject property is found at the southeast corner of McKinley and Apple Road. The property was rezoned to commercial in 1994 for an old basketball camp, and it was tied to a final site plan at that time, restricting the number of structures and improvements to what was shown on the plan. In 2002, a minor modification was made to this site when the use of the property changed from that basketball camp to the Faith Community Church, and that can be seen here. This final site plan again shows the existing building, parking areas, and landscaping that's present on the site today. The petitioner is looking to remove the final site plan restriction in order to build a fence and accessory building for a new proposed use as an electrical contractor. Here's the building as it stands today. This is with the signs from the old use. These will be updated for the new business north of the property. This is the location of where the accessory building is proposed to go. As an electrical contractor, this building will help provide storage for equipment that may otherwise need to be outside. This is a shot looking south. The area heading south on Apple Road is residential in nature. In contrast with looking north, this is McKinley Highway. In general, this portion of the McKinley corridor is commercial, and we do expect this trend to continue specifically as we head east from Apple to Ash Road and County Line into Elkhart. Here's a site plan submitted by the petitioner showing the proposed 6-foot chain link fence, providing security to the site along Apple as well as north, providing security for a north-facing door. In addition, you can see in the southwest portion of the property, there's the shed garage storage proposed there. This does come to you with a favorable 7-0 recommendation from the Area Plan Commission. No one spoke in favor or against this petition. Staff does find that it meets all criteria, and I would be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions from the council for area plan? Seeing none, petitioner?
I'm here. I'm Zoom.
Go ahead, please state your name and address for the record.
Christopher Grove, 69914 Roy Drive, Edwardsburg, Michigan, 49112.
Is there anything you want to tell us about the project?
Well, I will say this, after sitting through that last one, I'm sure you guys don't hear this much, but thank you for being pro-growth, pro-business, and pro-American dream. All I'm trying to do here is invest in my own property I bought, secure it, and this property went from tax exempt to being taxed, so it will help, the tax base as well.
Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Mr. Catanzarite.
Mr. Grove, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm one of these people who have been here a while on the council, and I was here when we rezoned that for the basketball academy. And to believe it or not, it was a highly controversial rezoning. The neighbors were very against that. And the use you're proposing here, I'm thinking might be as intensive, maybe a little more intensive than the basketball academy that was there at one time. All I'm gonna just caution you for is if this does get passed tonight, not sure if it's going to or not, but if it does get passed, please be cognizant of the neighbors. You do have neighbors to the west of you, across Apple Road, and it looks like some to the, maybe to the south a bit. But something as simple as just getting your trash service, your dumpster emptied at a time during the day. I know the trash haulers like to do it when nobody's there. I live next to a commercial property, a Walgreens drugstore, and they come at 5:30 in the morning to dump the dumpster, and they bang it 4 or 5 or 6 times, and it scares my kids half to death and wakes up an old guy like me, out of the middle of sleep sometimes. So I'm just saying, being cognizant of your neighbors if this does get passed. I would say schedule things like that there during the day so you're not disturbing the neighborhood. Because I just, and your crews obviously are going to come into work. I don't know if you have service trucks or if they're going to have to get their service orders for the day where we are working, but you're going to have neighbors around you. So as they're coming and going and leaving, you're going to have vehicles, maybe barns or sheds opening up. I would say be very cognizant of the neighbors and try to be as a good neighbor as you can, because commercial up against residential is a tough marriage, a tough balance there. Did you get that message?
Yes, I did, and the neighbor across the street from afterwards actually my cousin. So yeah, I'm cognizant of that. Most of our technicians are out on our customer job site every day, so realistically, there's going to be 3 of us there during the day, and probably gone by 3:30 throughout the week. And I would be very surprised if anybody there on the weekend, except for me myself. Certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Root.
Questions for the petitioner? Seeing none, we'll move to public hearing on Bill 2424. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this bill? Please come forward. You have 3 minutes to address the council. Please give us your name and address.
Jason Piatek, 2201 Riverside Drive. I'd like to speak in favor of this petitioner's request. Mr. Grove is bringing a much-needed service, and specialty skills back down into St. Joe County. So I appreciate your time and consideration for his approval.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor? Seeing no one, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Anyone online? Public hearing on 2424 is now closed. May I have a motion on the bill, please?
Motion to pass.
Motion to pass was made by Councilwoman Drake, second by Councilman Morton. Any further council discussion? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Fig,
Yes.
Ms. Sess,
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite,
Yes.
Mr. Tanner, Mr. Thomas,
Yes.
Mrs. Drake,
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel.
Yes.
Mr. Morton. President Root.
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that the bill was passed by a vote of 9-0.
Bill number 26-24, an ordinance to vacate a public way or public place located wholly within the unincorporated portion of St. Joseph County Public Way or Public Place. Petitioners Josephina Gonzalez, Elias Gonzalez, and Michael Ray Lips.
Committee report, please.
Yes, Mr. President, bill number 26-24 comes to full council with a favorable recommendation.
Area plan?
Sean Klein, Area Plan Commission staff. This is a petition to vacate an extremely short, unimproved street right-of-way north of Kelly Road, incredibly close to two single-family residences. As I stated, it's unimproved. It doesn't appear to currently provide access to the farm field to the north, which has its own frontage on State Road 331, from which it can get access. Consequently, staff recommends approval of the vacation. Similarly, the county surveyor and county engineer have no opposition to this vacation. I can answer any questions if you have them. Otherwise, the petitioner is here.
Any questions from the council for area plan? Petitioner, please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 5 minutes to address the council.
Good evening. My name is Josephina Gonzalez. The reason that I petitioned for this is because we had to have our a mound system put in because our septic failed. And the health department asked my contractor to do a design on our mound. And when he did, the health department didn't accept it where we wanted it. So I told our contractor, ask them where they want it. So the health department went out there and checked, and our contractor redesigned everything, did everything. We had him install it. After he installed it, we saw that some of our mound system goes into this part of the property or land that I'm petitioning for. And so I spoke with my neighbors, they agreed to it, and that's why I'm petitioning for it, because they are in the process of building a home in another state, and they're going to sell their house. And when the new buyers come in, we don't want issues with them. We want everything to be clear.
Any questions from the council for the petitioner? Hearing none, we'll move to public hearing on Bill 2624. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this? Please come forward, state your name and address. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Hi, Christopher Huff, 1831 College Street. I don't live anywhere near here, but I'm going to tell you one thing right now. Some of the regulations of St. Joseph County have had a big impact on the amount of land necessary for septic systems, as it probably should. I applaud this woman and her family for doing what they're doing, okay? And again, I don't even know where this is at. But just as a member of this community, I hope that you support it.
Anyone else that wishes to speak in favor? Anybody online wish to speak in favor? Seeing no one, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition? Anyone online? Public hearing is now closed. May I have a motion on the bill?
Move for passage. Second.
Motion to pass was made by Mr. Morton, seconded by Mr. Schetzel. Any further council discussion? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Ms. Hess?
Yes.
Mr. Catanzarite?
Yes.
Mr. Tanner?
Yes.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
Yes.
Mr. Morton?
Yes.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
President Root?
Yes.
Passes 9-0.
Thank you. Let the record show that bill number 26-24 was passed by a vote of 9-0.
Bill number 21-24, an ordinance to repeal ordinances related to property tax abatement in St. Joseph County. Petitioners Amy Drake and Joseph G. Thomas.
Committee report, please.
Yes, Mr. President, bill number 21-24 comes to full council with a favorable recommendation.
Thank you. Petitioner?
This ordinance seeks to repeal the complicated tax abatement procedures we have in place and replace it with a more straightforward application process. This is similar to the way Mishawaka already handles abatements, which appears to work well for them. As the Chamber of Commerce's Jeff Ray said at our last committee meeting, virtually all the businesses who he has worked with using the county's current abatement procedures find the process to be complex and difficult. As the sponsor of this bill, alongside Councilman Joe Thomas, I hope that we could tweak this process, simplify it, and make it more palatable for companies. While we certainly have expectations of the companies that want a tax break, we also don't want to repel them away from St. Joe County. The economic development sector within our state and outside of it is competitive, and different markets work hard to attract successful, high-wage paying companies to their areas. Right now, our current way of showcasing our abatement program involves handing companies a complicated 37-page packet of materials. Not the best first impression. The current process includes automatic qualifiers in addition to a complex, multifaceted point program that can win additional abatement dollars. We would like to make the entire process easier and more business-friendly. What we would like to do is offer an application process which allows companies to make the case to us why their development or expansion in St. Joe County is worthy of a tax break. Using this methodology as opposed to the current system also opens up the playing field and allows some companies that might not have previously qualified under the old rules to be eligible. The onus in the end is on the company to make its case to the county as to whether an abatement is worthy. It is then up to us as a council to make a final determination, and also up to us to make sure companies remain in compliance with their abatement. The application process allows us to maintain taxpayer transparency, as those application documents would be available for public review, as would their annual compliance reports that is the same as that happens now. We are not seeking to provide more abatements through this process, we're just aiming for a better process. We already know that the way we currently run the abatement process is cumbersome, and we already know that only some companies abide by those rules. Mr. Shalio pointed out at our last committee meeting that big companies like GM don't have to go through the process. Scrapping the old rules, using this new application process, and following what the state law says related to tax abatement will be more fair, and will also allow the council to be more involved and more flexible when granting tax abatements in the county. I worked on this in coordination with Jeff Ray from the Chamber of Commerce, and I want to give him the opportunity to say a few words if he has anything else to add.
Hi, Jeff Ray, President and CEO of Southland Regional Chamber. Offices at 101 North Michigan Street here in downtown South Bend. I can speak, I think Ms. Drake said some of that. My experience is really in the city of Mishawaka, where for 29 years I've had a chance to work with them on tax abatement. We have had no ordinance. We have an application that we've adjusted from time to time as things have changed. The real compliment goes to the council and the administration over there who found ways to work together for the benefit of the community. Generally, there has been disagreements on some of those tax abatements, but it's up to the responsibility of the council and the staff to come together to find that common ground. And so in 29 years, I'm hard-pressed to think of a time when one didn't advance as connected. The eyes are on St. Joseph County right now like they've never been before. We believe that what we're proposing in terms of Mishawaka does still have the same transparency that you have right now, in terms of you still require an application, you still have a public hearing, you still have public meetings, you still have compliance reports and stuff. It complies with state law that now is really out of line with where your current ordinance is. We think it doesn't take any authority away from the council. The council still has the same authority to accept, reject, modify whatever they want, as long as it's done in compliance with state law. And so, and I think the one point I would say, I think when people hear this, they think we're going to have 100 tax abatements. I don't think that's true. In Mishawaka had about 30 tax abatements in that 30-year period. So it was a process that was clear, but the city used the tool very judiciously, much like you in the county do. We think there's some benefit in aligning that. We think you really should look at these at a case-by-case basis, and that it's hard to design an ordinance that fits every single project. And the voters have put their trust in you to do that analysis, and we ask that that you simplify that process. I do have two things I'll share with you. I shared with you before the FAQ page. You have that. I'm happy to share it again. It's the same page. I didn't make any modifications. And then one more from the real estate company, the Bradley Company, who works with a number of these clients. Unfortunately, wasn't able to be here this evening, and so sent a letter on their way. So thank you for the chance. I'd be happy to answer any questions about how the Mishawaka ordinance has worked if you have any questions.
Thank you. Councilman Drake, are you finished?
Unless Mr. Thomas has anything to add.
I'm going to ask Mr. Ray a couple of questions. We're just talking about the application process. I wouldn't have signed on to this if this was any more complicated. I think we live in a competitive environment, and you're going to go to Elkhart County, St. Joe County, LaPorte County. If they start looking at all these pages and pages, I think we all kind of know how we kind of look at that. We go to the next county. And this is super competitive now with General Motors here. And I think we got to go forward with this. We still have the control of the council. We're not giving up that control. Me and some other council members visited some other businesses since we've been on, analyzing their abatement. So we still have control of the abatement process. And we're just eliminating the complicated, all of us like simplicity in our lives, and I think businesses speak volumes of that. But we still have control. We're not giving up any control. Did you find out when in Mishawaka, did you think it was too simple? In other words, did you think like, hey, the council is just breezing over this?
We did not, and I think much like you take your responsibility really important, the Mishawaka Council did as well. And so similar, the council in many cases went out and visited the site, met with the owners, reviewed the recommendations of the staff, and then ultimately found sort of some common ground in terms of what was realistic based on the information they had accumulated in the application. The application still requires a lot of information, but I think over time what we realized was some of that changes over time a little bit in terms of things that that maybe are more important to this council than the last council, and so the flexibility gave us that choice to adjust an application and hand that out that next day, not to have to go through a complicated ordinance renewal process. So we think as the staff and you work close together on tax abatements, you gain a good understanding of the things that are important to the council. You include those in an application. Then as you're meeting with those prospects, we hope you have a good understanding of why they're requesting it. The staff makes the case with the company in terms of why you should consider that abatement, and then you ultimately have the final say on whether you think that's an appropriate path or not.
I tell you the part that going to the businesses that I've been going to and evaluating them, I mean, that's huge. And then you have a better perspective than just looking at a piece of paper. I mean, I found that to be really beneficial. And also, I think we like to have our kids and our grandkids around here, and I'm selfish about this, but I think most of us are. The more businesses that come in, I keep going back to General Motors, but man, our grandkids and kids are gonna be working at those places, and I think this is an opportunity to simplify this plan, this abatement, and this application, and make it a lot smoother and easier for the companies to look at. But we still have control. We're not losing control.
Yeah. The other thing I'd add, Mr. Thomas, is just the tax and regulatory environment in Indiana is such that an abatement isn't required on every project. And so sometimes, given the competitive nature of a project, given the large capital outlay that happens, given your desire to redevelop a key piece of town that may not see investment otherwise, again, that you reserve that right or that flexibility. I think, from a council standpoint, if I'm sitting in your shoes up there, I want to understand, why this is necessary, why it's important to the company, what other communities are doing in similar cases like that, all the kind of questions I think that you already asked that you'll continue to ask. I don't sense any changes in that. I really think this is a big case of the first impression isn't good. Each of our peers have made their processes much simpler. The IDC has taken that lead and made a very simple process that really includes a two-page application, and we think St. Joe County following suit keeps us at a competitive edge with all of our competitors.
Thank you. Since Mr. Thomas asked a question, let me open it up to the full council to ask petitioners or Mr. Ray if the council has any questions. Ms. Hess?
Jeff, I just have one question, I believe, and that is, have any businesses decided not to do business here because of the tax abatement being cumbersome? I mean, and isn't there, I guess, two questions. Doesn't our staff help them if there are any, get through that application process? I'm just wondering how burdensome this really is on a company that wants to either expand or come into the county and get a tax deferment. There's some obligation for them to provide additional investment, in my opinion. So just how many companies have we lost to this?
I think that's a great question. It's probably the hardest question to answer because we don't always know why we lose them. So we work every year with 60 or 70 different prospects that are looking at doing some business in St. Joe County. And so sometimes it's zoning, sometimes it's they can't find the right property, sometimes it's tax abatement, sometimes, so I think there are a lot of factors that go into it. I'd be hard pressed to say XYZ didn't go forward because of that, but we think it's part of the overall, so this is a game of survivor that we play every day, and people are evaluating us against other communities and looking for reasons to rule us out. And so we think we'd like to take away a potential reason to rule it out. We'd like to bring those to you. We'd like you to have that flexibility to consider why that should happen. We don't know. It's hard to, I guess, track back if that. I think we hear a lot of times it's not you, it's me. We've made it different. We're going to a different part of the country. There's a lot of factors that go into that. So.
And I guess I'm just questioning the timing of it and the rush of it. I mean, there's been conversation earlier tonight about rushing through things, and since we didn't really, most of us didn't know anything about this till it ended up on our committee agenda, and Mr. Shalio, our own economic development director, didn't seem to be involved in the process, and he had asked for a pause. I'm just questioning why it needs to be rushed through at this point. Because we got interrupted in our committee meeting.
Mr. Root.
Mrs. Drake?
I'd like to respond to that, that this was rushed. Me and Mr. Ray have been working on this since October, and it's gone through the normal process. It went through first reading, so it's been around for a month. Everyone's had an opportunity to look at it, to comment, to input. We had committee meeting a couple weeks ago, and everybody said it was rushed and they had extra things to say about it, but no one came to me with any changes or things that they wanted to see differently. So I don't know that is quite the case. Also with Bill Shalio, he did make the comment at our committee meeting that I had not approached him about the ordinance, but in fact, Jeff Ray and I reached out on October 13th to have a meeting with him about it, which he did not respond to. On December 12th, he was also emailed about the abatement process changes on a document, did not respond to that. Following up after our committee meeting on February 27th, I reached out to Mr. Shalio asking if he would like another meeting. He eventually got back to me, said he would like the document to look at to make some changes. I asked for a meeting instead, and that was on 3/3/24. Also did not get a response again from that. So I don't know if it's totally genuine to say that there has been no desire by my part to take anybody's input. I did reach out on my own to Brian Tanner because he is familiar with the Mishawaka ordinance, and so I asked him how it worked for him, if he had any suggested changes. I did take some of his suggested changes, and I have an amendment on the bill tonight that reflects some of those changes. I also heard indirectly that Mr. Schetzel had some issues about local labor, and so I, on the amendment, also included some questions or a question on the application concerning that.
And I appreciate your response. I just know that when this tax abatement ordinance was adopted, there was a large, rather large group of people working on it. It wasn't just a couple of people working on it. And it included different constituencies in the community, along with various council members, et cetera. And again, as I said before, some of us have been working on looking at revising the tax abatement ordinance just a few years ago, but that ground to a halt. So I'm certainly not opposed to taking a look at it, but I would just like to have an opportunity to have more discussion in the process and include more voices in the process.
Any further comments or questions for the petitioners? Mr. Thomas?
Well, I've got a, should I read, the commissioners would like me to read a statement. Should I read?
Hold that for
Hold it? Okay.
discussion. Any further questions for the petitioners? Hearing none, let's move to public hearing on bill number 23-24. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to speak in favor? Please come
Christopher
forward,
Huff.
state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Christopher Huff, 1831 College Street, South Bend City, unfortunately in many ways. So going back to 1984, when I began work in the city of Mishawaka, some of you up there were able to take advantage, if you will, of the ordinance regulations that we stripped away, completely threw out, and revised. One of which was the ordinance governing tax abatement. And as Mr. Ray accurately stated, Mishawaka has done very few tax abatements over the years. Now, as far as what is the success rate of St. Joseph County overall? So between 2010 and 2020, Elkhart County grew by 8.8%. Elkhart City grew by 5.8%. In St. Joseph County, Mishawaka grew by the same percentage growth rate as Elkhart City, 5.8%. South Bend City grew by 2.2%, although the 10 years before that, they dropped by 6.1, in addition to the 30,000 other people that they lost, okay? So altogether, St. Joseph County, during the same time that Elkhart County grew by 8.8%, St. Joseph County grew by 2.2. Is that success? How did the organizations, the groups that put together the tax abatement ordinance that some of you seem to be very infatuated with, how has that improved St. Joseph County? And whoever said about their kids and their grandkids moving back here, that's exactly right. So strip it all away, redo it. Now, the other part of this whole thing is, do you want apparently some of you do you want a monolithic document that requires A, B, C, D, E, F, and G? Or do the 9 of you who have brains, and wag your head if you do, and I don't mean to be sarcastic, but this is all ridiculous. Strip this away, get rid of it, and I'm relying on you, and some mine specifically up there, get this fixed, all right? St. Joseph County's a laggard. It's been a mess for years, for God's sake. Every one of you know that too. All right? So strip it away, get rid of it, done.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor of this ordinance? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Hi, my name is Rick Slagle. I live at 67590 Pine Road in North Liberty. I've been in business, a business owner for over 50 years, or contractors, and I've worked all over Indiana and Michigan. The good places to work, and there's a lot of difficult places to work too, but the good places seem to be the places that keep things simple. Our current tax abatement ordinance, which I was against 15 years ago when we did it, is anything but simple. It's 37 pages long, and probably the businesses that have the worst time with it are the smaller businesses, the ones that are probably going to fill in around the 2 monsters that we have coming to our area. Replacing it with this simple application, I think, gives the council and the staff a great idea of what the business is all about. And then the council, as they should, will be the ones that decide whether to award or not to.
Thank you.
Thank you. George Lepiniotis with offices at 4101 Edison Lakes Parkway, Mishawaka. I saw Jeff recently at an event, and he asked me to come here and speak to you as an attorney who is hired to help companies get tax abatements. He thought that that inside perspective might be useful as you think about changing the ordinance. I don't normally come and speak without a client. Attorneys get paid. This is our stock and trade, and we sell time. So for me to come here and talk to you about an ordinance that I don't have a client to represent, just as a member of the chamber and as a member of the community, I wanted to make clear, and I appreciated the gentleman's comments, a company like General Motors has bottomless pockets to get economic development dollars. And I'm talking a little bit inside baseball, but they will pay us a lot of money to help them do that. A company like a local plumbing contractor, or a local grocer, or a veterinarian who also might benefit from the economic development dollars that the county has to spend may be intimidated by the process and may not want to spend thousands of dollars with me to get to that point where they can get some help to build their business. It isn't this, while I don't want to disagree with Jeff, and I think that, you know, the competition for the larger projects is very important. The reason I really came here tonight is because I grew up in a small business, and I recall my parents not having the sophistication of a General Motors. And had they known that they could get a tax abatement, and had they been able to fill out a 1- or 2-page application to do it, and then have you fine folks help them through that process, just like you did the woman tonight with her mound system, I think that's what it's about. And I think everything else can kind of go by the wayside. I'm a fan of giving everybody time, and I'm a fan of everybody having a voice in the process. But a simple application robs you of nothing and opens this up for thousands of small business owners who might benefit from it. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Joe Lane, 25638 State Road 4, North Liberty. Appreciate you guys bringing this to the council. I think it's overdue. We talked about it being 15 years ago. There's a reason it's coming forward now, is the people of St. Joe County have opted for a different leadership from what they had 15 years ago. So the reason this is important is I've spent the last 25 years in the development world. Site selection is the first step out of the blocks to even be considered. There is a tremendous amount of competition amongst cities. There's a tremendous amount of competition just in St. Joe County and Elkhart County. We use Elkhart as an example. There are companies that would like to relocate from Elkhart to St. Joe County for various reasons, special things that St. Joe County may offer. Right now, processes like this just shut the door. They don't even get out of the block. They'll just leap right over St. Joe County into LaPorte. They'll shoot south. They might shoot up into Michigan. But when we put up barriers right out of the gates that have unreasonable requirements and things that have nothing to do with operating a day-to-day business, a successful business, a small and medium-sized business, because that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about, do we want to take down barriers that are keeping small and medium-sized businesses from even looking at St. Joe County? Or are they just going to go right on past because right out of the gates they get that big old binder? Now, I have seen the site selection process, and sometimes companies will put up with it for big cities that have an abundance of opportunity. We are at the precipice of a lot of opportunity for St. Joe County that is going to benefit all of the citizens in St. Joe County, including the cities. Those are job opportunities for small and medium-sized companies. This packet doesn't just impact the construction, it impacts the operation of a company. So when we talk about taking down the barriers for businesses, it also takes down the barriers for opportunity for our local businesses to participate. The current process begins to lock out small and medium-sized businesses who want to participate in when a company comes into town. We need to remove those barriers. This is a very straightforward process. It's very clean. It does not take any power away from the council. In fact, I think it empowers you to give more opportunities. More companies are going to be standing where I am right now, lobbying you for opportunity in this county if we just make that first step out of the blocks available. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who wishes to speak in favor?
I'll just ask maybe a question whether it's appropriate or not. So I handed you the Bradley letter. Is there value in me reading or paraphrasing some of that so that it's part of the record, or is handing you that sufficient in doing that? Unfortunately, they had a prospect they were meeting with and weren't able to come this evening, but wanted to make sure their comments. I don't know, if you need it, if handing it to you is okay, or reading it to you, generally, I could paraphrase that the Bradley Company said very similar things in terms of, tax abatement's not a one-size-fit-all thing. It's not appropriate for every project. Anything we can do to simplify this process. And similar to what Mr. Lepiniotis shared, this is a real estate company that's working every day with prospects looking at our area and believes that a streamlined, more simplified process, as in many of the folks that we work with, think that's appropriate. And so I just wanted to maybe reflect that just for the benefit of the public. And again, you have the full letter there. So
Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt.
Anyone else that wishes to speak in favor in the room? Is there anyone online who wishes to speak in favor? Seeing no one, we will move to those in the room who wish to speak in opposition. Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Jason Piatek, 2201 Riverside. While I appreciate the council's efforts to examine tax abatement, because I do think it's a critical incentive to promote growth in the county, my concern is the shock and the lack of discussion that was allowed during the committee meeting when certain councilors were shut down. So I don't believe that they were all given their due diligence and allowed to speak their full opinion. And noticing Mr. Shalio's, just witnessing his kind of shock when realizing that this was being presented. I don't believe that everything that was as transparent as being offered. I would ask that you table this and allow for more discussion. I fully endorse and support you looking into, amending the tax incentive ordinance if it needs it. Usually most of them do, especially if it's been 15 years, but I ask that you slow this down and table it. Thank you.
Steve Francis, Judy Lake Drive, Clay Township. Lucky you get me 3 times tonight, and I apologize for that, I really do. Okay, thank you, Mr. Morton. But I do want to provide some context because I was here when this was written. I was a part of the work groups that put this together. At the time, I was state chair of the largest conservation organization in the United States and the oldest, and I represented that organization. I don't tonight because I've retired from that position, but it was a process that took many months. We wrestled with the issues and the complicated scenarios involved in tax abatements. We brought together members of the community and civic organizations, environmental and conservation groups, labor groups, and even some business folks. We asked business people to come in to guide us in terms of what site selection was like, what the process was like. It took 3 council meetings in which Mr. Root remembers he got up and walked out at one point. Because he didn't like it, which is okay. That's your prerogative. But I do appreciate that it needs revision. And I do appreciate that perhaps 15 years is too long, just as 21 years is too long for a comprehensive land use plan, and that it needs to be updated. However, I don't think anyone understands that the council now, as it exists, has the ability to do whatever you want. You have the clause in the current tax abatement to say, we don't agree with the point system. And you have exercised that, much to the chagrin of other people who are in that work group, I might add. I think that the time is important. I think the community buy-in is critical. And if you go ahead and vote this through within a month, and with all due respect, my council member said, well, she got together with Jeff Ray back in October. None of us were aware of that or involved in that. Well, the first I heard of it was when it was introduced. And I tried to speak at the committee meeting. I was roundly rejected by the chair of the committee as speaking, although Mr. Ray was allowed to speak. And I think that you need to pause, give it some time, get some community buy-in. You're going to be on the hook if you do away with this. And I like the questions. I don't think the questions are any problem. We need more information. But if you do away with this and you start granting tax abatements as a taxpayer, you're going to run into a lot of fire and brimstone, which is what happened before. We're going backwards in time, where people were upset with the tax abatement and no real system in place to match the abatement with the community benefits. The more community benefits you have, higher wages, reaching out to marginalized communities, conservation efforts beyond the law, the more benefits you have, the more tax abatement you receive. And that was a sensible, logical system that's in place. It's not too long. For $1 million, you can take some time to answer some questions and fill out a form, even if it is, which it isn't. It's not 37 pages, but that's what the whole ordinance is. So I ask you to table this, to give some time to it, take a couple months, involve some of us in the community who have been involved in the past. It's not a difficult thing to do. And I hope you do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Murray Miller. My address is 1201 Priscilla Drive, South Bend, Indiana. And I appreciate that you guys are going to look at the tax abatement. However, I ask that you table it based on more community involvement, input. Ms. Drake mentioned labor. Labor was never invited as part of this process. We'd like to see it open to the community, and I would ask that you table it tonight. Thank you.
How you doing? Dan Mattamore, 426 West 8th Street, Mishawaka, Indiana. I came here with starting off against this ordinance because I didn't really know anything about it, and but I came with an open mind, and I'm not sure the amendments coming on or anything, but Jeff's got the greatest job in the world. People are knocking on his door. But you guys represent the whole community. And I don't know if you took labor along with it. I'm organized labor. I'm just an electrician. My son followed behind me, electrician. I agree with Mr. Thomas. I'm wanting my other 4 kids to move back here. More opportunity, more growth. But I'm not sure about your process. Is that normally the way you guys do ordinances, or with the abatement? Obviously, 37 pages is outrageous. I mean, no one wants that, do you? But you need to bring the groups together. For, like I say, you represent all the community, and I'd like you see to do that. I don't know what the amendments are, but maybe table this and get more input. Thank you.
Anyone else in the room that wishes to speak in opposition? Anyone online? Michael, go ahead. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council. Michael?
Thank you. It took a while for the unmute to come up. This is Mike McManus, 51940 Lilac Road. Good evening. I'm all in favor of more and better business in St. Joe County. I believe in simplicity. The current system probably is a little long, but as Mr. Ray said, so far it has not deterred, at least there's no evidence that it has deterred anyone from coming to St. Joseph County to do business. When I read in the paper this morning that Mr. Shalio, the person that all of us pay in the county to be the closest to the actual deals that are made and protecting our financial interests, had not really was not ready to sign off on this. That gave me a great deal of pause. There seems to be a sense of rush about everything that's going on in the county these days. Whether or not somebody had lunch with somebody else back in October, this is very new to the public. Tax abatement is a very complex issue. It's very important to the development of our community. And when people like Mr. Shalio, and I don't always agree with things that he's done, are called out publicly by our public servants in public, I'm sorry, that is the wrong thing to do. It is demeaning to that public servant. It is demeaning to us as a community, and it undermines our faith in everything that you do. If you can sit up there and slop all over your own people, that's inappropriate. So please give this some time. Give some more people with expertise in these areas to check in, talk about this, and discuss it. If no one's being turned away now, I don't suspect that a tidal wave of people are going to be turned away tomorrow. So please put this down for a while, involve the community.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
McManus. Next up is Mary.
Mary Countryman, 52959 Timothy Road, New Carlisle. There's a reason businesses want to move into St. Joseph County. It's the water. We have water. We have something that so many other areas do not have. And you are literally going to be giving away the farm if you make this any easier. If anything, you should be making it more difficult. We should be choosy about who comes into our area. We should have higher standards because they have no stake most often. They don't have a stake and they don't have a history of being here. They too often don't have a history to where they really care about staying or taking care of things. If something goes wrong and water runs out, they're gone. But that is the reason why there are so many people wanting to come to St. Joe County. You're giving away so many things, and the water is such a valuable resource. Don't make it any easier. Don't lower your standards. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Cheryl Nix.
Hello, Cheryl Nix, 17901 Sable Ridge Drive, Clay Township. I read in today's newspaper, and one of the things in the newspaper said Jeff Ray, President and CEO of South Bend Regional Chamber of Commerce, believes the current process could be an impediment. When asked today, what evidence do you have that it's impeded businesses, there was no direct answer. There's no real evidence, direct evidence, that this tax abatement process has limited businesses coming to St. Joe County. And so I'm uncomfortable with changing the tax abatement completely based on little evidence that it's going to make a huge difference. I do, however, think it's always good when something's 15 years old to take another look at it. So I do want to thank Councilwoman Hess for saying that she's not opposed to looking again at the tax abatement, but that we need to involve more voices. I would like to kind of echo what Mike McManus said when he said, let's bring in some experts on this. There are probably tax experts. Perhaps that one attorney that spoke earlier could speak to the tax abatement process. Let's have a public meeting to let us find out about the differences between what you had before, what you're proposing we get. I would say that looking at the fact that we landed a $3.5 billion energy plant, and granted, they have all their attorneys to work through all of this, belies kind of the concern about bringing businesses to the county. I also am concerned that Bill Shalio is asking for a pause. It seems to me that he's somebody you should trust when he says, let's pause and let's really think about this. I think you should consider it since he's in charge of economic development. And the other thing I would say is, if somebody finds it cumbersome or difficult, certainly we have people in our county that can help businesses, small businesses, medium businesses, work through this. So throwing everything away and bringing something else in without really thinking it through and getting other voices to the table, I oppose that. Thank you.
Is there anyone else online who wishes to speak in opposition? Seeing none, the public hearing on bill number 21-24 is now closed. I believe we have an amendment. Does the clerk have the amendment?
Has there been a motion yet?
Well, that's what I'm asking for. I mean, I'm asking for a motion on the amendment, because I think we need to do that first.
I move to put forward an amendment.
But before we start with the amendment, let me give you 5 minutes, because you're asking for it. I see it, Mr. Thomas. You get 5 minutes to rebut anything that was said, so.
I wonder, should I read the commissioner's statement?
Not yet.
Okay, I don't want you to
If you want to
forget.
rebut anything that was said in opposition during the, that
Okay.
time.
I can rebut some of
Okay.
that. I want to reiterate, this is the same process that every ordinance goes through, same time frame, same opportunity with the public to speak. So it's no different than most bills that go through. Second of all, you've talked a lot about having many, many stakeholders. We had that happen 15 years ago, and we ended up with a really cumbersome document. And Mr. Ray maybe can't say that somebody hasn't come here because of it, but he has said that every business he's worked with has found it troublesome and difficult to navigate, and that people even have to go and get a lawyer to understand it. So I think with this new version, it's a different approach. We know it works for Mishawaka. We know this approach is not the best for St. Joe County. So those would be my responses to some of the things I heard.
Thank you. Mr. Thomas?
I just want to say one or two things that's getting lost. It's almost being framed as we're losing control. We are not losing control. We still make the call. We still visit businesses and make the decision. We are not losing control. And this is a very competitive environment we live in. Today, I think it's unprecedented. Labor shortages, businesses are doing pretty darn well, and I mean, they're going from county to county to county, and it doesn't take much for someone to look at all the rules and regulations we have. We're simplifying it. We're not losing control, and I don't want that to get lost. I think that's getting lost, that we're losing control. Thank you.
Mr. Dalton also sent us all an email recently talking about some legal issues that he had with our current abatement process and why he thought it should be scrapped. Can you talk more about that, Mr. Dalton?
Well, let's.
Or is that not something I
Yeah,
need to know?
let's end rebuttal, if you guys are done with your rebuttal as the petitioners.
I'm done.
And we will open now for discussion and for motions. So if you want to ask Mr. Dalton the question at this point, go ahead.
Same question, Mr. Dalton.
Steve Dalton, financial advisor to the county. It's a dangerous thing to ask me to come up here because I probably understand each of your approaches, the 9 of you. So I'll answer your question, Councilwoman Drake. I think it's important that you realize that the abatement ordinance that was hashed out 15 years ago has a point system, has an elaborate workbook of however many pages. We're going to argue over the pages, I'm sure. And maybe it needs some updating. I think it's also important to remind you that the last 3 or 4 abatements you approved didn't use that workbook. You used your own exception in your ordinance that said that you can approve whatever you want to as long as it meets the state statute. So my legal questions for you would be, why do you need such an elaborate process if you have the right to do anything you want anyway? Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. And now can I move to make my amendment, or not yet?
We're in discussion. Go ahead. If you want to make an amendment, go ahead.
Okay, Mr. President, I make a motion to amend Bill number 2124 as follows. Amend the body of the ordinance to include the following at the end of Section 4. The St. Joseph County Council shall retain the authority to require the parties seeking abatement to appear before the St. Joseph County Council annually to provide requested information concerning compliance with its corresponding abatement requirements and/or commitments made in connection with seeking property tax abatement benefits. Number 2, amend Exhibit A, real property tax abatement to include 15L, briefly describe the safety culture within your organization. 15M, briefly describe the training and education culture within your company that allows upward mobility opportunities for your workforce. 15N, briefly describe your goals and commitment to using local contractors, vendors, and suppliers. Number 3, amend Exhibit B, personal property tax abatement to include 17M, briefly describe the safety culture within your organization. 17N, briefly describe the training and education culture within your company that allows upward mobility opportunities for your workforce. And 17O, briefly describe your goals and commitment to using local contractors, vendors, and suppliers.
Thank you. Is there a second to the amendment?
Second.
Second, we will now enter into discussion on the amendment part only, so discussion on the amendment. Is there further council discussion on the amendment part? Mr. Morton? Mr. Tanner?
Thank you, President Root. I do want to commend Amy for reaching out to me with regard to my feedback on my experience on the Mishawaka City Council as it applied to abatement applications and your consideration to include some of those amendments in here. I know it wasn't solely my feedback, but I do appreciate you reaching out to me. It was, in my opinion, necessary to reach out to me, though, because I wasn't given any opportunity, even as a member of the committee, to provide that feedback during the committee meeting. We were silenced, and that wasn't your fault, Ms. Drake, but there was members and participants on this council, part of that committee, who motioned and seconded and passed that motion to silence other members of the council and that ability to participate in that conversation just 2 weeks ago. That's unacceptable, in my opinion, if you actually value our feedback. But I do commend you on, after the fact, reaching out to me and appreciating and including my feedback. I do genuinely appreciate that. This does reflect the spirit of what I wanted to see in there, and then a couple extra points that maybe I hadn't considered as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the contents of the amendment?
Mr. Root?
Mr. Catanzaro?
Very similar to what Mr. Tanner had to say as far as a lack of participation and contribution to the ordinance. I don't think the amendments go far enough, and that's, I think there's a lot more that could be amended, and I think you might end up being back at the ordinance, if you let us do it. You might be back at the ordinance that we have. And just to clarify a couple things, our current ordinance is not our current application is not 37 pages long. It's about 17 pages long.
I think it means with the additional workbook pages.
Okay. I confirmed that, I thought, with IPG, just to confirm it. I mean, what you're proposing tonight, before the amendments, each one, a personal property tax abatement and the personal property, the real property and personal property tax abatements, both combined are 18 pages long. So I don't know how much more we've simplified it, other than stripping the old ordinance of its language. But as far as the amendment goes, Mr. Root, I don't think it goes far enough. I think there could be a lot more amendments we could work on if we had more time to work on it as a group.
Can I would like to add to that, remember, this
Thank you,
is
Mr.
an
Root.
application process.
Mrs. Drake?
Oh, I'm sorry, yes? Oh, I can go. This is an application process, and you said the amendment questions don't go far enough, but you're the county councilman that's negotiating these deals. You can ask anything you want. This gives you an outline so that you've got something to work on and to maybe meet some of those questions that you don't think of immediately or prompt you to think of others. But you're not glued to the questions here. I mean, you have the ability to ask whatever you want.
Any further comments or questions on the contents of the amendment?
Mr. Root,
Mr. Schetzel?
I think, as Ms. Drake inadvertently said there, these are just questions. That's all they are. They're a list of questions. I mean, it might have taken Mr. O'Brien 10 minutes to sit down and write that list of questions. It's wholly inadequate, in my opinion, and I will be voting no.
Any further comments on the amendment? Hearing none, clerk, will you please take the roll on the amendment?
Mr. Catanzarite?
No.
Mr. Tanner?
I just want to state for the record that we don't know how the actual vote will go on the entire bill, so I am going to vote in favor of this amendment.
Okay. Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
No.
No, okay.
No.
Mr. Morton?
No.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
No.
No. And Mr. Root?
Yes.
Okay. Quick tally here. I have 5 noes, or 5 yeses and 4 noes.
Let the record show that the amendment was passed by about a vote of 5 to 4. The amendment now becomes part of the bill, and we can continue our discussion on the bill. Any further council discussion? Is that a hand?
It is.
Mr. Tanner?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, if I may, could we call Mr. Shalio up to the podium for a couple questions?
You're free to do that, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Shalio?
Yes, sir.
I hope I'm not opening a can of worms. I would like to keep my questions very specific. Mr. Ray, at our committee meeting, underscored that the way it works for Mishawaka is based on trust between the council and the economic development team within the city of Mishawaka. And I couldn't agree more. That had, in my experience and observation since, been a mutually agreed upon and beneficial process based on trust in the city of Mishawaka. So to that end, I want to trust your responses to these questions. Do you believe, in your opinion and experience as the head economic development director for the county, that the implementation of this ordinance repeal and application process may disrupt any active economic development negotiations?
I don't believe they would disrupt any active negotiations as it exists today.
Okay. Then, just as a general statement, that if you want to add any flavor to, but just to put this out there, this is one person's opinion out of a 4-year term that may or may not go beyond 4 years, right? But to me, an abatement has to pass 2 tests, regardless of this application. That those being, will this project that is potentially going to receive the abatement going to substantively benefit the community long-term? And would you agree that that's at least one thing that you're looking for when applicants or companies are seeking an abatement, that they're at least going to benefit the community long-term?
Absolutely.
And then the second part of that test, and again, this is a personal one that I'm just gauging your opinion on and sharing with the community. To me, it has to pass the if not for test. It's similar to what's used in state law for TIF and things of that nature, but for the layman's meaning, if not for the abatement, the project would not happen, or it would happen somewhere else. I'm watering this down to an extreme, but should it at least pass that test too?
It should, and I think there are some projects that, that we do take a look at that probably would move forward without it, perhaps. I know, for example, EdCoat, which was a project that you guys all reviewed last year, we were very competitive with a site in Minneapolis. They ended up choosing us. But for that tax abatement, would probably have done that investment in Minnesota. So that is a critical piece, I believe.
Thank you. That's all I had. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Shelley, and thank you, Mr. President.
Any further council comment or questions?
Mr. Root.
Mr. Schetzel?
This proposed ordinance was created by Council Attorney O'Brien at the behest of Councilwoman Drake and with the well-intended participation of Mr. Jeff Ray, President and CEO of the South Bend Regional Chamber of Commerce. Who was missing? Among others, there was no county executive branch representation in the development of this proposal. Mr. Shalio mentioned his surprise at the proposal. Just recently, the County Economic Development Team, including Mr. Shalio, which plays a major role in negotiating the terms of any abatement and then assuring compliance within an approved abatement, did not participate. No commissioner or commissioner staff member participated, and no legal representation for the commissioners was present. The knowledge accumulated by the Economic Development Team, commissioners, and commissioners' legal counsel as they have negotiated the last several abatements and in serious negotiations for significant future abatements was, quite frankly, ignored. In addition, negotiating contracts, whether with other governments or corporations, has, through most of the history of our federalist system, and starting with the Jay Treaty of 1794, largely been reserved for the executive branches of government. Given that historic precedent and the overwhelming role our county's executive branch plays in negotiating abatements, one has to wonder why that branch's representatives were not involved from the beginning of the process in drafting a new abatement ordinance. Furthermore, as I read this proposed abatement ordinance, I am concerned that the spirit of the document would give this county council, the legislative branch of our county government, undue power. Ultimately, our job as council is to vote a proposed abatement up or down. If we choose to vote it down, we then have the opportunity to suggest alterations that would make the proposed abatement more palatable. That is our role, nothing more, nothing less. Let's consider the alternative. Instead of professionals such as Executive Director of Economic Development Bill Shalio, Economic Development Planner Terry O'Brien, and Commission Attorney Phil Bennett negotiating for the county, each of whom have significant depth of experience in the field of abatements, a subset of the council, including President Root, a librarian, Mr. Schetzel, a teacher, Mr. Fig, a bureaucrat.
Mr. Schetzel, please be careful that you do not impinge on council members and their abilities. Thank you.
And other council members negotiate.
You should not have called out people by name,
I could have called any of us.
but you chose certain members and you should not have done that.
I have written here Mr. Catanzarite, a fireman, and Mr. Morton, a salesman.
Marketing consultant.
Sorry. The experience and expertise of the first group clearly outweighs that of the second group and would therefore lead to a stronger agreement for the county. Equally as significant, the proposed ordinance has zero incentives for companies receiving abatements to hire local labor and local contractors, which I would define as non-union, 90% of our workforce, and union, 10% of our workforce. Hold on just a moment. And contractors from St. Joe County and the surrounding contiguous counties, Berrien and Cass counties in Michigan, Marshall, Elkhart, LaPorte, and Stark counties in Indiana. I consider that local. We have great assets in our well-educated, industrious workforce and in our local contractors who invest in our community on a daily basis. As county government, we should and we must operate with an abundance mentality as we endeavor to elevate St. Joe County with billions of dollars in investments to a place where opportunity abounds and transformative wealth is commonplace for those willing to gain education and work hard. Therefore, I will not agree to an abatement ordinance that gives tens of millions of dollars in tax breaks to the largest of America's corporations while failing to incentivize those companies to use our local workforce and local contractors. The argument has been made that this new ordinance would signify to the world that our county is open for business. That proclamation ignores the significant work done by our economic development team, commissioners, commissioners' attorneys, highway department, and other staff over the last couple of years. It is blind to the success of those individuals in securing commitments from the likes of AM General, GM Samsung, and projects in process such as Razor 5. St. Joe County is clearly open for business, even under the current abatement ordinance. I have also heard reference to this proposed ordinance being very similar to Mishawaka's abatement ordinance, an ordinance that has seen very little change over the last 30 years. Let's compare Mishawaka's most recent projects for which an abatement was approved to St. Joe County's last approved abatement and 2 that are in development. The Mishawaka City Council approved 7 abatement projects going back to July 5th, 2017. These include Lippert Components and J-Mill Packaging in 2017, J-Mill Packaging again in 2019, Wellpad in 2021, and Barak Group, Front Street, and Helios Hydraulics Americas in 2022. They have a total value of $116,877,167. The most recent abatement approved by the St. Joe County Council is worth by itself $4.2 billion with a B. This is the GM Samsung project. Other large projects are in development. The scope, complexity, and value to the community of current and future St. Joe County abatements overshadow those contracted by the city of Mishawaka. Clearly, we are operating in a different realm of the business world, and therefore, our abatement ordinance must be more robust. Yes, the current abatement ordinance needs to be replaced, simplified. Mr. Huff, we will get it fixed. Mr. Schlegel, it will be simpler. It needs to be better for local business. It is overdue. We do need to take down barriers to small and medium-sized companies, but not with this proposed ordinance. In order to guarantee that a new proposal is not rushed and there is time for the proper participation, such as Mr. Shalio, participation in and vetting of a new abatement ordinance, I will not consider an affirmative vote on any new abatement ordinance for at least 4 months from today's date. In addition, I expect the team working on any new abatement ordinance to include, but not be limited to, appropriate representation from the County Economic Development Team, Executive Branch Legal Counsel, Mr. Bennett and Mr. Mish, and County Financial Advisor, Mr. Steve Dalton. Any process short of the participation of these executive branch representatives, in addition to the 4-month vetting period, will not receive my support.
Mr. Sheffield, who is Mr. Bennett?
Mr. Garrett.
I'm sorry, Mr. Barrett, my bad.
Mr. Barrett, who's Mr. Barrett?
Mr. Garrett. Phil Garrett.
Mr. Garrett, I
All
am
right,
sorry.
third time, finally.
Sure, I
Anybody
got it.
else that would
Mr.
like to
Garrett.
comment on the council? Ms. Drake?
Mr. Shalio, can I ask you a question, please?
I'm sorry, Mr. Garrett.
I was disheartened at our committee meeting when you said no one contacted you. That has been the base of a lot of the stories in the press this week, and my records indicate that is not true. Do you have records that are different than mine?
So the first record we have is when you had provided us an email on December 12th, excuse me, of the potential ordinance change. That was the first notice that we had that this was moving forward.
Was there one on October the 13th from Jeff Ray that included you and I in a meeting with him?
I will tell you that I have searched my entire inbox and find no emails in that. If you have one, I'd love to see it. I know that
I'm happy to forward it to you.
Perfect. Mr. Baxmeyer or Commissioner Baxmeyer had asked for a copy of that too, so.
And also, when I asked you to meet this week, did you have more concerns that you wanted to share with me? Because you never got back to me about that.
So Commissioner Baxmeyer and I were to talk. The building was closed because of the pipe break, and so we hadn't circled back. He was going to reach out. The two of us together wanted to meet. And he traveled, I traveled this week, so we were just both unavailable to meet. So I apologize for the inability to have met before tonight.
Can you tell me where the commissioners stand on tonight's abatement, please?
So my understanding is they have prepared a statement, or they read a statement earlier today that was prepared for them. That was read at the meeting today. And again, I did not speak in favor or against. The commissioners have made a position. I work for the commissioners. Their position was that they support the ordinance. I don't believe the statement said they support the ordinance moving forward today or next week or when, but they, as I do too, I support the process of having a conversation about this ordinance.
So are you saying your understanding of their comments today meant they did not want us to pass it tonight?
I am saying that I have read an early version of the statement. I was not at the meeting when they read the statement, but my understanding from at least two of the three commissioners was that they were going to support an ordinance discussion moving forward.
We have a copy of the comments that they made, so can we read that into the record, please?
Mr. Root, should I read this? Commissioners ask council to vote to repeal outdated tax abatement procedures. The county council will consider repealing our current complex tax abatement and exchanging it with a more simplified process. We are in full agreement with this change, and frankly, we think it's about time. Companies have had a choice when considering which counties to start or grow their businesses. The county's current rules for an abatement are cumbersome. That's a bad impression for St. Joseph County. During this dynamic period of St. Joseph County's economic history, we want to send the signal that we are open for business. Updating and modernizing our abatement procedure will do just that. We support these pro-business changes and encourage all members of the county council to vote to repeal the county's current abatement procedures and opt for a simple application process. We are also in favor of an amendment offered by the bill's sponsors to add additional questions to the application process dealing with local labor, safety, and employee training opportunities. Carl Baxmeyer, Derek Dieter, Anthony Hazen, St. Joe County Commissioners.
Mr. Root, can I add something else?
Mr. Drake?
I'm trying to respond to my colleagues' concerns, and one of them was that the commissioners were not involved. I explained that they were, and they also support the ordinance. My colleague also appeared to say that he did not have involvement. I reached out to him several times, and so did others, asking if he had any amendments or anything he would like to see in tonight's ordinance, and we did not receive any response. So I find those remarks somewhat puzzling.
Any other further council comments or questions?
Mr. Root?
Mr. Catandre?
Yep. Few things that were said tonight I have some concerns with, and I tried to voice that the other night during a committee meeting, and seemed like maybe it fell on deaf ears, but as somebody who was part of the process 15 years ago when we developed that ordinance, it's been said too, and I think some of my other colleagues agree, we don't think the ordinance doesn't need to be looked at, reviewed, revamped. There was a process beginning before that didn't get completed. Probably, I'm thinking COVID took the front seat on a lot of projects we had going back then. But, so I don't think there's anybody that's opposed to looking at our current ordinance and revising it. It's not 37 pages long. You know, the workbook's about 17 pages long or 18 pages, or the application's 18 pages. If you want to include the body of the ordinance and all of that, yeah, you might add up to 37 pages. This current ordinance that's being proposed is not that much different in size in terms of being 18 pages when you have the real property and the personal property applications combined. And that doesn't include the amendments tonight, and it does not include the actual ordinance itself. So it would take it up over 20 pages. I have a problem in the preamble, essentially, that it says we want to have a process that's in order to display that St. Joe County is open for business. And I take offense to that because I think we are open for business. I think the fact that we've got major world companies and U.S. companies that are looking to locate here and make huge investments says that we are open for business. I don't think there's ever been a company, I noticed that one of the things is a confusing set of property tax abatement ordinances. I don't know how confused they are because no one's ever said to us, we're so confused, we're not going to come here, or we don't understand your abatement process. I believe, and if I can call Mr. Shalio up too, I believe if somebody were confused, would IPG help somebody navigate what's perceived as a confusing ordinance? Or have you guys helped companies navigate?
Absolutely, yeah. That's what Terry O'Brien and Chris Brown before him would do.
What concerns me about this ordinance is it talks about the council's discretion. It also uses the word broad discretion for the council to grant or deny a property tax abatement. When I hear the word council's discretion and broad discretion, it actually makes you think that the ordinance is going to go from being very objective like it is now to becoming very subjective. That all depends on who's up here sitting at the council. the comment was made that we are repelling companies from coming here. I don't know if we're repelling companies or not. I really, Jeff couldn't answer that question tonight. I'm not convinced that we're repelling companies from coming here based on the amount of investment and amount of interest in our community right now. And what I like about the current ordinance that we do have is it does give us a way to measure and evaluate what somebody has to bring and offer to the community in terms of community investment, not just the physical asset, but what they also bring to the community in terms of wages, quality of wages, benefits, things that are going to be, long-lasting. Somebody can come in here and build a multi-billion-dollar building but pay paltry wages or have poor benefits, and we're really not that better off. So I think that's a good way to measure that by having the process that we do have. So if there were ever an ordinance proposed that I think, involved a large cross-section of the community to have input, something as important as tax abatement. That's one of the things I've always heard as a council member, people, why are you guys giving tax abatements? Why are you giving tax money away? Why are these companies feeding off the back of the citizens? And the ordinance was in place to actually have a way of measuring and saying, you know what? We've evaluated this company. We've looked at what they have to offer. And these are the pluses and here are the minuses. And that helped us make decisions in the past. Every year when we have Mr. Dalton reevaluate and report to us the SB1s, the statement of benefits that each company provides, and we all have a say in that matter and decide whether or not we're going to accept, whether or not that company's going to retain its tax abatement or we're going to claw it back. We have that authority. So I'm just not convinced that a complete overhaul or a complete repeal of the current ordinance is necessary versus a modification of it or to work on it more. I just feel that a complete repeal is not necessary. And to compare us to Elkhart County and to other entities, it's just not fair. The type of work that we have here in our county, the type of investment we have is not comparable to what Elkhart County has in terms of industrial investment. A lot of their industrial investment it's a lot more temperamental. We've tried to diversify our industrial investment. So we have companies that if one portion of the economy goes down, we don't necessarily have jobs leaving the area immediately and having to go other places. I'd ask my other council members to consider voting against this tonight and in favor of having us look at our current ordinance and working to modify it. Thank you, Mr. Root.
Thank you, Mr. Tandrike.
Mr. Root?
Mr. Thomas?
This is the application process, and Mr. Shalio may want to jump in here. Correct? This is just the application process? We're not talking about actually this is the application for the abatement.
Yeah, so there's an application that's been prepared that
Right.
shows both real and personal property.
Right.
And part of the challenge is the questions that are asked within the application don't actually, within state law, there's certain criteria that have to be met for the various types of real and personal property abatement. So it would be nice to make sure that at least those questions are covered in the application book. And presently they aren't.
That would have been nice to know ahead of time, if you had answered my emails.
Certainly.
But it's the application. Every business has its own unique abatement request, right?
Certainly, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think the two are separate. We're talking about the application. We're not panaceaing here in every business on these abatements. Every business has its own unique abatements. And this is just the application. Am I correct on that?
Correct. I guess the question is, what weight do you add to the application questions? And that's the question that,
But I always go back, and sorry to be so repetitive, we're still in control, and we still you can say what you want in paper, but we're still hashing it out up here and going to the plants and so forth and checking it out. I still think we're getting confused a little bit with the abatement application. I know you want to have some requirements on there, and then going forward with the abatement. That's a huge difference between the two. Am I correct on that?
I guess the question is, state law has certain requirements for granting abatements. You're asking questions as part of the application, which is certainly you're right, and I think that it's good to have that information. The question is, what are you ultimately weighing your tax abatement decisions on? And that's one of the things that we would ask from a staff perspective. What is the goal? Is it investment? Is it jobs? Is it redevelopment of properties? What are the target metrics that we're trying to hit with
And you're
abatements?
doing that after the application, though. Then after the application, then you're talking to, hey, what are your metrics? What would you like? I know I'm kind of pinning it down
I guess
here.
I'm asking, the issue is, because we don't have the guideposts that we used to in the old ordinance, we don't have an understanding what the council's metrics are for approving tax abatements. I think that's the challenge at this point in time.
Thank you.
So, and I guess that's, that's what I was gonna address it. And I think it was Mark that mentioned, Mr. Gratan's right, that this goes from being a more objective process to a more subjective process. That by having some metrics from which to measure, and which I think that's been important for a lot of other things we've discussed, to have actual measurable metrics is an important way to evaluate. That doesn't mean we are bound, you know, solely by that. So, but I think having those objective metrics is important.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think there was a nugget in there that was just shared with us by Mr. Shalio that, quite frankly, I hadn't considered before. I didn't think that I would be caught surprised by anything tonight, but that did. I think what you, wittingly or not, exposed was without guidelines, and I'll lean back into that trust of understanding between the economic development team and the council on what those expectations are, we are at risk of working through economic development deals that are brought to the council with fewer assurances as to what the council's temperament is on those, and reworking and rebuilding and going back to the drawing board with those potential investors. And not to say that it's going to happen, but potentially hampering their interest because it's a I apologize for just speaking stream of thought here, but there was mention before of selling time. And what I know of land use development and the cycle of it is very time intensive. And if we don't get the job done in the 30-day or 60-day or 90-day period, that developer, that investor, that company realizes that they're going to be spending a lot more money on a lot more legal, civil planning development time and consultant fees to restart that process and hone in on what the council wants after we've gone through the bulk of the process. I'm not saying that's what will happen if we pass this tonight, but that is something that I've gained observation of, and at least gives me some pause on where we stand with potentially passing it tonight. So again, I don't know that that was your intent, but that's a fear that I was just induced with, if I'm being quite transparent.
Anyone else?
Mr. Root?
Mr. Catandra.
I wanted to ask Mr. Shalio another question, and I apologize for doing that again. Mr. Shalio, you sound like a lot of us up here that say it's time for us to look at our ordinance and review it and consider revamping it, the present one. You know, if not, maybe even repealing it. We don't know what everybody's position is yet. Would the timing of repealing the current ordinance today and inserting the new ordinance as it is written with the amendments be a good thing, or is the timing poor?
No, again, I would stand up here and say, I support looking at the ordinance, making modifications to the ordinance. And I really think if we want to call it the Mishawaka Way ordinance, I mean, I think that's a good way to look at it, strip it down to the state law. But again, I think the concern that we have is we just need to understand how it needs to work, you know, where are those guideposts in the process. I don't think it impacts existing projects in the mix. We don't have a whole lot. I mean, we've got a couple of projects certainly in the mix, but I think going forward, it certainly is a good position to put us in.
I have another question maybe to Mr. Ray. Do we have a SCORE chapter here, Mr. Ray? Don't we have a SCORE chapter? We do. I mean, so isn't that an organization of retired business executives that help small businesses navigate things and establish themselves and do things? Would your SCORE group be available to help somebody navigate a tax abatement process, or have they helped in the past?
Certainly be an option. Honestly, with SCORE, it oftentimes depends on the expertise. If someone has maybe went through that process before. Typically, your tax abatements aren't on your really small businesses, though. Typically, only manufacturing, and not that SCORE doesn't work with those, but
You suggested earlier that small businesses and
Yeah.
medium-sized businesses might not apply for one.
Yeah, so I do think I think it's an attorney thing. I think like almost all of them feel like they have to have an attorney to navigate it, to help them understand what they think is the complications of the ordinance. And so that's really the complaint. You'll have CFOs and others who feel like they should be able to understand that because they understand the tax process, but they're going to do this once in their lifetime. And so I think that's why it's so complicated. It's interesting when, historically, I think whether it's zoning process, anything, the people that do this all over the country never blink an eye because it's different in every place. The people that an ordinance like yours right now affects the most are the local guys who once in their life are going to do this project and have to go through that process. And so that's just that complicated piece. And I'm certainly not. There's a lot of great attorneys in the room here, so I'm not trying to speak ill of that. But that's a costly thing to navigate that process, and I think that's the biggest complaint usually.
But if you have the properly trained people working or volunteering in SCORE, they could also help somebody navigate that process for free or reduced fees, whatever they don't charge any fees, do they, in SCORE?
I don't believe they do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments? President Root. Can you refrain from impinging members' ability by name?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Schetzel.
Thank you. Mr. Shalley, let me ask you one question.
Yes, sir.
Do you believe if you had been involved in creating this ordinance from the beginning of the process, that you, Mr. Terry O'Brien, and Mr. Garrett would have been able to add value to the ordinance?
Well, I think we would have liked, yes, I'll just go with yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, do we have a motion on Bill 2324?
Motion to pass.
Second.
Motion to pass was made by Councilwoman Drake. It was seconded by Councilman Fig. Any further council discussion? Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mr. Tanner?
No.
Mr. Thomas?
Yes.
Mrs. Drake?
Yes.
Mr. Schetzel?
No.
Mr. Morton?
No.
Mr. Fig?
Yes.
Ms. Hess?
No.
Mr. Catanzarite?
No.
And Mr. Root?
Yes.
I have 5 noes and 4 yeses.
Let the record show that Bill number 2324 was defeated by a vote of 5-4, and according to council rules, may not be brought up for another 6 months. That concludes our land use planning. Next is unfinished business. Next is new business. We need to review and approve Mr. O'Brien's legal services. Is there a motion to do that?
Motion to pass.
Second.
Motion was made by Councilwoman Drake, seconded by Councilman Thomas. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting Mr. O'Brien's legal invoice, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. It is accepted. Old business? I don't believe we have any old business. Privilege of the floor, limited to 3 minutes to any item not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to take advantage of privilege of the floor in the room? Please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
Tom Rowe, 26160 Lake Lane. It's been a long night for everybody. My speech will be very short, okay? When I attended the last meeting on 2/13/24, I asked whether a committee had been formed to explore other location options for the 80-bed New Day Intake Center. At that point in time, the response was still in formation procedures. It was too soon. So number one, hopefully I can get a response one way or the other, I never know, as to whether that committee has been formed now to explore other options.
Yes. If I'm not mistaken, there was a press conference held
I can't hear, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. If I'm not mistaken, there was a press conference held with concerned business owners and concerned citizens. And I believe that is a task force that has been formed, and communications have been ongoing with the mayor and the commissioners. I know that for a fact because I have been a part of those conversations and continue to be a part of those conversations. I've also talked with the executive director of the new intake center and informed her that these conversations continue to happen. And that's about what I can tell you at this point, sir.
I must have missed that press conference. I did not see that, okay? I try and keep as well read as possible.
Well, you know what? You know what's interesting about that, because I was asked to be on the initial task force. And when I saw this meeting, this press conference on WSBT, no doubt, I was just as shocked as you were, because I knew nothing about it myself. So all I'm saying is there are a lot of different conversations going on a continuous basis. I reached out to the mayor today, and I have a call into him as we speak.
I understand this. I just read, or somebody told me tonight, and I was unable, I had a VA appointment today. I was unable to be at the commissioners meeting when there were 16, a new group of businessmen that came forward and presented 15 or 16 different options.
That's who I'm referring to, sir.
I wanted to make sure that we're on the same page.
Yes, that's who I'm referring to.
I will go in for a little bit further elaboration, though, because
Sir, I think your 3 minutes are up.
he had response, okay? The councilman, I didn't have a chance to
About
finish.
15 seconds, according to the clock.
Pardon me?
Our clock keeper says you have about 15 seconds left in your original.
I'll stop then, because he responded to me.
I'll be glad to talk to you, sir.
Well, that's not right, because he was responding to me. I hadn't finished my speech, okay? So if you want to run it that way, feel free
How
to.
much time did he have left, Mr. O'Brien?
It's expired now, but you have broad discretion.
So if you'd like to take another 30 seconds, go ahead. I think that's about where you were.
Wonderful. Let's time this out. Sites were passed on, this is South Bend paper a couple months ago. Sites passed on for South Bend low barrier housing. Portage Manor, denied. Derek Dieter. Out close to the sheriff's department, okay, and the community correction center, denied. No valid reasons for that. Then you go on and you look, and there's a lot of people that are involved in this. I'm just going to say one thing. That'll be the last thing that I will say tonight. And I'd written this down. Any member that is not a proponent of the Housing First model should recuse themselves from this search committee. Simple. If you don't believe in it, don't be on it. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there
Thank
anyone
you for
else who
your
would like to
gracious
speak
time.
for privilege of the floor? Is there anyone online who wants to speak for privilege of the floor? Seeing no one, privilege of the floor is now closed. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor, aye? Aye. Opposed? Aye. We are adjourned.